Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 on Wattpad. Now let's start. A young boy with messy green and black hair and 2 sets of diamond-patterned freckles marveled at a small ball of light that had appeared in his hand, wondering if this was his quirk. A man who resembled him, though lacking freckles and sporting white hair, confirmed that it was indeed Izuku's quirk. 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲, a short woman with green hair, questioned 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, asking if it was too early for Izuku to be manifesting his abilities. She leaned in closer, whispering her concern. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, feeling a sudden wave of pain, fell to one knee. Both 𝗓𝗏𝗏 and Izuku rushed to his side, with Izuku's confusion evident while 𝗓𝗏𝗏 understood the situation all too well. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 managed to choke out a response, confirming 𝗓𝗏𝗏's fears about the hunger that plagued him. Izuku, frightened, insisted they needed to get his father some food. 𝗓𝗏𝗏, holding back tears, explained that food wouldn't help, as this was a drawback of 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏's quirk. Izuku's eyes widened in distress, and he hugged his father tightly, expressing his longing for 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 to be free of such burdens. As Izuku embraced him, a glow enveloped their hands, and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 felt the hunger begin to fade. It was as if his son's presence was alleviating the drawback entirely. After a few moments, the sensation disappeared completely. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 turned to 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏, who nodded in understanding, signaling that it was time to explain his quirk to Izuku. Later, the 2 adults sat on the couch in their living room, facing their son, who appeared uncomfortable. They pondered the best way to explain 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏's quirk without frightening him. Finally, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 spoke up, calling Izuku's attention, which made the boy flinch, worried he might be in trouble. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 admitted he hadn't been entirely honest about his quirk. Izuku's expression shifted from worry to confusion as he tilted his head, prompting 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 to focus. He revealed that his quirk was not fire breath, but rather called all for one, and it wasn't a very nice quirk. Izuku, intrigued, asked what his father meant. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 explained that his quirk allowed him to take, use, and give quirks, with no limit to how many he could hold. He shared a brief history of his quirk, mentioning how he had given in to the hunger during the early days of quirks, taking as many as he could. Over time, he had become more selective, seeking powerful quirks while also trying to reclaim his brother's power. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 had stopped this pursuit about 16 years ago when he met 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏, the daughter of the 7th holder, 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He fell in love with her, and after a year of dating, he realized the consequences of his past actions during a confrontation with 𝗓𝗏𝗏. Their fight ended with an apology, and 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏 chose to retire, revealing her continued life only to her children and close friends. Eventually, she approved of 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏's and 𝗓𝗏𝗏's relationship, though she teased him about his age, which embarrassed him. After sharing this history, Izuku's mind raced with heroic possibilities. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he exclaimed how cool it was that 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 could help the quirkless become heroes and take quirks from villains. He rambled on about the potential for good, but 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 gently interrupted him, bringing him back to the moment. With a tear of pride in 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏's eye, 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 announced that they had one more thing to share before heading to the quirk doctor. She looked at her husband with a smirk before turning back to Izuku, revealing that he was going to be a big brother. Both boys took a moment to process the news before erupting in surprise. To be continued. The shout from Izuku and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 echoed across the apartment complex, startling some residents while others remained undisturbed. One person, however, was jolted awake, tumbling off his couch in surprise. What was that? Was the collective thought among the neighbors. Izuku was filled with excitement as he processed the news. He exclaimed that he was getting a sibling, while 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 echoed the sentiment about having another child. They exchanged glances, then looked at 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and back at each other before jumping into the air in sheer joy, their excitement spilling over into a jumble of words. 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, recognizing where Izuku got his tendency to mumble, gently reminded them to focus. She calmly stated that they needed to visit the doctor to check on the baby and discover what Izuku's quirk would be. The 2 boys stopped their exuberant chatter and hurried to get ready, both colliding with the doorways of their rooms in their eagerness. At the hospital, the family of 3.5 sat in the quirk doctor's office, eagerly awaiting Izuku's results. The little ball of energy was practically bouncing in his seat, not thinking about his own quirk but rather about his unborn sister, filled with questions about what she would be like and what interests she might have. Soon, a middle-aged man with brown hair emerged from a door at the back of the room, holding a clipboard and wearing an excited yet serious expression. He announced that he had excellent news, revealing that Izuku's quirk might be one of the most powerful he had ever encountered. Inko and Hisashi exchanged glances, both asking what it could do. Izuku, momentarily pulled from his thoughts about his sister, listened intently. The doctor explained that Izuku's quirk would allow him to create, edit, and delete quirks entirely, with the ability to determine every detail, including drawbacks and classifications. He could even grant quirks to others without any negative consequences for them, and there was no limit to how many quirks he could create. As the family absorbed this information, Inko and Hisashi felt a wave of concern wash over them. They realized that if others discovered Izuku's quirk, he might become a target. Hisashi began to contemplate who among his associates would be best suited to protect their son. Izuku then spoke up, capturing everyone's attention. He asked if he could be listed as quirkless, surprising everyone, especially the doctor, who had been about to suggest the same. The doctor was curious about Izuku's reasoning. The young boy explained that if people believed he was quirkless, he could better gauge who his true friends were, rather than those who might only want to befriend him for his powerful quirk. The doctor was impressed by Izuku's thoughtful decision and rational explanation. After confirming Izuku's request, he officially designated him as quirkless and handed over the relevant documents, allowing the family to decide how to proceed with the information. The small family expressed their gratitude to the doctor before leaving the hospital and heading home. Meanwhile, the doctor picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in a while. A tired voice answered on the other end, asking what he wanted. The doctor excitedly mentioned that he had met a child who would be of great interest to both Shota and Nizu. Back at the Midoriya household, Inko settled onto the couch, feeling exhausted. Hisashi stepped into another room to make a call. Izuku approached his mother, asking if they could visit Kaken's house the next day to share the news of his quirkless status. Inko was taken aback but agreed, doing her best to remain composed. She contemplated whether to inform her best friend Mitsuki and her husband about Izuku's quirk, knowing they were already aware of Hisashi's. Izuku reassured her that he trusted Auntie Mitsuki and Uncle Masu, suggesting that she could share the truth if she wanted. He expressed confidence in their ability to protect him, even joking about how Auntie Mitsuki would defend others fiercely, which made him shiver in mock fear. Inko stifled a laugh, recalling how Hisashi had once been intimidated by her. Hisashi returned, still on the phone but signaling that he had something important to share. He advised Izuku that given his quirk and the decision to claim quirklessness, it would be wise for him to learn to fight and control his abilities. Inko nodded in agreement, and Izuku simply accepted the suggestion. Hisashi then instructed someone to come in, and a purple mist filled the living room, gradually revealing a man and an animal. They greeted the Midoriya family warmly. To be continued. At Yue, a small creature, resembling a rat or mouse, inquired about the reason for their summons. The doctor inquired as they sat in his office, accompanied by a black-haired man who seemed to be in desperate need of coffee. Bunseki mentioned that he had met a very interesting child that he believed they would both like, surprising the two of them. It was well known that the man didn't have a fondness for children, and the creature was not particularly fond of humans, making them both very selective about their interests. He began to explain that the child possessed an incredibly powerful quirk, one that allowed him to create, edit, and destroy other quirks. Their eyes widened in shock as he continued, noting that typically, when a quirk of such magnitude appeared, he would suggest to the parents that they consider having the child declared quirkless. The two nodded, curious about where this was leading. However, before he could finish, the child had spoken up and requested that option for himself. The expressions on the faces of the two listeners were almost comical, and the creature accidentally sprayed tea across the table in surprise. The black-haired man, slowly regaining his composure and sporting a small grin, asked why the child had made such a request. He found the decision rational but was curious if the child had provided a reason. The doctor confirmed that he had, recounting the child's words. If he possessed a quirk that could create and modify others, people would only befriend him to gain strong abilities. By being perceived as quirkless, he believed he could better discern who he could truly trust. This revelation astonished both men. Intrigued, the black-haired man inquired about the child's age, expecting to hear about a late bloomer with a more mature perspective. The doctor simply replied that the child was 3 years old. This single word caused their minds to momentarily short-circuit as they processed the information, but it was not long before huge grins spread across their faces. Just then, a dark purple-haired woman entered the room. She began to greet Nizu but halted when she noticed the grins on the faces of her co-workers and boss. A wave of fear washed over her, prompting her to rush out to warn the other staff members of the impending storm. Nizu, eager to meet the boy, asked for the child's name. 𝗵𝗃 provided the details. Izuku Midoriya, the son of Hisashi and Inko Midoriya, with only one known grandparent, Nana Shimura, and an unborn sister. This revelation further piqued Nizu's interest. With an eerie smile, Nizu expressed his enthusiasm to have a word with the child, and Aizawa mirrored his expression. Just then, the phone began to ring. To be continued. Dekuwhatif, 3 Deku x Yui, 1 Deku x OC, 1 Kazue Mineta, a 16-year-old girl, had a unique quirk called aura manipulation, which allowed her to change her aura to match that of another person, effectively copying it. She could also disable or warp another person's aura through direct contact, rendering them unable to use their quirk for a limited time. However, she could only copy a maximum of 3 auras at once and needed to be within a certain range to do so. Despite these limitations, Kazue was determined to find new ways to use her abilities. One day, Izuku was surprised to see Eraserhead, the hero he admired. He expressed his excitement, noting that he preferred Eraserhead over All Might because he felt All Might's moves were predictable and questioned his beliefs about heroism. Eraserhead was pleased to meet a fan who had a different perspective. Hisashi, Izuku's father, called for the three of them to sit down. Inko sensed the seriousness in Hisashi's demeanor and asked if he was going to share something important. Hisashi confirmed that he was about to reveal his alias, stating that he was all for one. The revelation startled Eraserhead and Nizu, who immediately assumed a defensive stance, ready to confront him. However, Hisashi assured them he did not intend to fight. Nizu questioned why they should trust Hisashi, to which he proposed an offer. He suggested a villain rehabilitation program where he would teach at UA, under Eraserhead's supervision. If his behavior was deemed acceptable, he could become an official hero or an exclusive one for UA. The idea intrigued Nizu and Eraserhead, as it could potentially deter villains and pave the way for a new approach to rehabilitation. Hisashi's son, Izuku, was confused by the conversation and asked why his father would need a villain rehab program. Hisashi explained that the hunger he had experienced was related to quirks, and in his early years, he had selfishly taken quirks for his own gain without considering the consequences for others. He admitted that he had once been known as the symbol of evil, all for one, but he was determined to change. Izuku, sensing his father's distress, comforted him by affirming that Hisashi was no longer that person and that he was now Hisashi Midoriya, his dad. Hisashi was overwhelmed with emotion, tears filling his eyes as he embraced his son. He remembered Inko's words from years ago, realizing that he had a family worth protecting and a future to fight for. To be continued. Third POV Izuku entered the Bakugo household with his parents, his excitement palpable as he greeted his blonde friend, Katsumi. She responded with a casual acknowledgement before pulling him into her room. She mentioned that her mom had told her about their visit to the quirk doctor the day before. Upon hearing this, Izuku's expression turned somber. He didn't want to lie to his best friend, but he felt it was necessary to protect her. Katsumi noticed his change in demeanor and immediately inquired about it. Izuku hesitated before revealing, with a hint of sadness, that the doctor had said he was quirkless. This was technically true, as the doctor had declared him quirkless in a legal sense. He wanted to avoid outright lying while still withholding the truth about his quirk, so he settled for half-truths. Katsumi's disbelief was evident as she processed the news. At just 3 years old, she was concerned for him, especially since he aspired to be a hero. However, she recalled hearing about a hero named Eraserhead who fought without a quirk. Perhaps Izuku could follow a similar path as an underground hero, staying low-key while battling villains. Still, she needed clarity on his intentions. She asked him directly if he still wanted to be a hero. Izuku looked up at her, hope shining in his eyes for reasons she didn't quite understand. He affirmed his longing with a bright smile that could light up the room. Katsumi pressed on, asking what kind of hero he wanted to be. Izuku pondered for a moment before expressing his wish to be a hero who helps others, not for fame or fortune, but purely for the sake of helping, much like Eraserhead. His voice grew more animated as he spoke, and Katsumi felt a wave of relief wash over her. She made him promise not to get hurt, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. His response was another radiant smile, one that filled her with happiness. He assured her that he would be careful, grateful that their friendship remained intact, even as he prepared for the day when her quirk would awaken. Downstairs, Mitsuki, with her keen hearing, questioned Hisashi about Izuku's claim of being quirkless, especially given the circumstances of their visit to the doctor. Hisashi took a deep breath before explaining that Izuku's quirk allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks. He revealed that Izuku had requested the doctor to label him as quirkless to avoid attracting people who might only want to be close to him for his abilities. Mitsuki listened, unable to argue with his reasoning. Masaru, eager to change the subject, asked if anything else exciting had happened recently. Hisashi's face lit up as he dramatically proclaimed that his son found all might obnoxious, which prompted laughter from the others. Inko then chimed in with the news that they were expecting a daughter. Mitsuki's excitement was palpable as she reacted with disbelief and joy. Inko continued, sharing that Hisashi would be entering a villain rehab program at UA, where he would work as a supervised teacher for 6 years before becoming a licensed pro hero, exclusive to UA. Masaru expressed his admiration for the news, and Inko added that Izuku would receive quirk training from Nizu with assistance from Hisashi and Eraserhead. The group was astonished at the thought of Izuku training with such esteemed figures. As they discussed Izuku's promising future, Masaru speculated that he would likely receive a recommendation for UA. However, Hisashi clarified that Izuku wanted to demonstrate his abilities properly before pursuing that path. Mitsuki suggested they prepare lunch, and she and Inko headed to the kitchen, ready to celebrate their family's bright future. After 9 months had passed, the family gathered in the hospital, captivated by the face of their newest member. Izuku quietly remarked on how adorable she was, careful not to disturb her. Hisashi inquired about her name, and without hesitation, Inko declared it would be Yuki Midoriya. Izuku then spoke up, capturing their attention. He expressed his longing to create a quirk for her, which surprised both Hisashi and Inko. When they asked why, he explained that he wanted her to live her life fully and pointed out that she currently had no quirk. This revelation took them aback. Curious, they asked how he knew this. Izuku shared that he had developed a quirk allowing him to see others' quirks, but he could only use it once. Inko and Hisashi exchanged glances. Inko then proposed that they should learn everything about the quirk and that Yuki could only receive it after turning 4 and visiting the quirk doctor. Hisashi, puzzled by this stipulation, sought clarification. Inko elaborated that if Izuku created a powerful quirk for Yuki, it might lead her to feel superior to others. She believed that if Yuki was told she was quirkless, it would aid her personal growth in the long run. Hisashi, though not fully understanding, decided to trust Inko's intuition. Izuku agreed to her plan with a smile. To be continued. The next chapter would begin with Yuki's visit to the quirk doctor. The story had been progressing slowly, and the author intended to speed things up with a time skip, leading into the start of the anime. An original character would join Izuku in rescuing Katsuki, and they would decide to train together for the next 10 months until UA, with Izuku teaching her how to fight and developing her quirk around the 8th month. The doctor delivered grim news, stating there was no hope for Yuki. Her face fell as she dropped her All Might figurine. Inko, already aware of the situation, used Izuku's quirklessness as an excuse to inquire further. The doctor asked if she was a fourth-generation quirk user, to which 𝗏𝗏 confirmed, demonstrating her ability to levitate the figurine into her hands. 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐵's quirk, the ability to breathe fire, was kept secret until Yuki reached middle school. The doctor explained that by age 4, a child should manifest a quirk from one or both parents. He shared a significant finding from early quirk research regarding the extra joint in the pinky toe, indicating that those without it represented a new stage of evolution. Unfortunately, Yuki had 2 joints, which was becoming rare, and the doctor confirmed she possessed no quirk at all. 𝗏𝗏, knowing the implications of this news, asked if there was any chance Yuki would develop a quirk. The doctor explained that while there had been a few cases of children with 2 joints developing quirks, the occurrences were exceedingly rare, with only about 20 cases since quirks had emerged. Upon returning home, 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐵 greeted them enthusiastically and feigned ignorance about the doctor's visit. 𝗏𝗏 revealed the doctor's conclusion that Yuki would be quirkless, while Yuki entered her room with her head down. 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐵 and 𝗏𝗏 exchanged knowing looks with Izuku, who observed their interaction. Izuku's quirk was named All for All, a tribute to his father. This unique ability allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks. When he created a quirk, he formed a small ball of energy, which he called a blank quirk, into which he could input information. Alternatively, he could absorb the effects of existing quirks, particularly emitter types. For example, if Bakugo launched an explosion at him, Izuku could absorb it into the ball, resulting in an exact copy of that quirk. He had the option to give away the quirks he created or keep them for himself. Izuku had no drawbacks to his quirk, but personally he was reluctant to create overly powerful quirks. He preferred not to make quirks for himself unless absolutely necessary, ensuring they only lasted as long as he needed them. This led to him developing a list of quirks he could create in an instant, a skill he honed after joining UA. As the school year began, Izuku sat in class, taking notes on the new hero who had debuted that morning, 𝗵𝗲. Although he was already at a university level in terms of knowledge, he chose not to skip ahead. The teacher soon gathered everyone's attention, announcing that they were all third years and needed to start considering their futures. He then tossed student career forms into the air, declaring that he assumed everyone wanted to be heroes. The class erupted in excitement, showcasing their quirks, but the teacher reminded them that using quirks in school was against the rules. Izuku thought to himself about the instability and danger of heroism, believing that each student should have backups. He noted that many of his classmates were not putting in the necessary effort and would struggle on their first missions. Katsumi, one of his classmates, boasted about her abilities, dismissing the others and claiming she would surpass All Might and become the best hero. This drew ire from the rest of the class, who felt insulted by her arrogance. Izuku sighed, knowing that her confidence was misplaced. When the teacher pointed out that Izuku was also trying for UA, he felt frustration rise within him. He slammed his head on the table, mentally expressing his annoyance before looking up. He responded in a monotone voice, which only elicited laughter from the male students. Despite their mockery, Izuku remained composed, reminding them that he had not been defeated in a fight and that he had backup plans beyond being a pro hero. The girls in the class admired Izuku for his intelligence and kindness, despite his quirkless status. They wished him good luck, which only fueled the boys' jealousy. As the school day ended, Izuku quickly packed his things, eager to return home to help his sister with her homework and quirk training, hoping she hadn't developed any new abilities. On his way home, he took a shortcut under a bridge and suddenly encountered a sludge villain. Izuku dodged its attack, realizing that physical strikes would be ineffective against its body. He focused on its eyes and mouth as potential weaknesses. As he continued to evade the villain's attempts to capture him, he managed to throw a book at its eye, causing it to scream in frustration. Seizing the moment, Izuku jumped onto the villain, using the wall as leverage to land a punch on its other eye, prompting another scream. Just then, a blonde hero appeared, declaring his arrival with confidence. He launched a powerful punch at the sludge villain, and Izuku was sent flying back but managed to regain his footing midair. He watched as the hero subdued the villain and placed it into a container. Izuku offered to help gather the sludge, introducing himself as Izuku Midoriya. The hero, All Might, was surprised by Izuku's calm demeanor amidst the chaos. Izuku explained that they needed to collect the villain first before he could express his admiration. Once they finished, All Might prepared to leave but noticed Izuku holding onto his leg, expressing urgency about a crucial question he needed to ask. All Might, recognizing the determination in Izuku, agreed to listen. They moved to a nearby rooftop, where Izuku asked if someone without a quirk could truly become a hero. His heartfelt question caused All Might to hesitate, realizing the weight of Izuku's words and the struggles he had faced due to his quirkless status. As All Might began to transform, a cloud of smoke enveloped him, leaving Izuku startled and uncertain about what would happen next. What happened? Izuku wondered. At least he didn't start panicking and accusing All Might of being an imposter. All Might sat down and pulled up his shirt to reveal a large scar on his left side. He explained that he had received this injury in a battle with a villain 5 years ago, nearly losing his respiratory system and undergoing intense surgery that left him only able to work as a hero for about 3 hours a day. 5 years ago. Wait, was he referring to All for One? This revelation surprised All Might, as the details of that fight were supposed to be a secret. How did this kid know? Izuku shared that his father had almost died in that battle, which further astonished All Might, who thought there were no civilians present during the fight. Izuku then expressed curiosity about why All Might would confront someone capable of taking quirks and why he hadn't lost his own. He feigned ignorance, already aware of One for All, and mentioned that his father had suggested it sounded like a personal vendetta based on All Might's words during the fight. He asked if the villain had harmed someone close to him. All Might confirmed that he had indeed lost someone dear to him, the person who had taught him to be a hero, 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓. This revelation genuinely surprised Izuku, as he knew that Hisashi had not killed 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, but he needed answers. If she had wanted him to know, she would have told him. Izuku expressed his condolences, acknowledging that Maverick had been an incredible hero. This caught All Might off guard, as he didn't expect any kids these days to know about heroes like Nana. Izuku explained that his mother had been a major fan of both her and Gran Torino, which was true, though Nana was also Inko's mother. The mention of Gran Torino made All Might shudder in fear, and he sighed. All Might thanked Izuku and addressed his earlier question, explaining that heroes constantly put their lives on the line. Without a quirk, one was more likely to be a liability than anything else, and he apologized to the kid before turning to leave. Izuku sighed, realizing he now had to keep this from Yuki. This surprised All Might, who asked what he meant. Izuku clarified that he wasn't asking for himself. He wanted to reassure his sister that even if she didn't develop a quirk, she could still be a hero in her idol's eyes. He didn't mind whether or not he could become a hero, but she did. He then posed a question to All Might, asking if a pro hero was the only type of hero. All Might's eyes widened in realization. How could he have been so foolish? Of course, a hero wasn't necessarily a professional but someone who helps others. Izuku walked past him. All Might began to apologize, acknowledging that he should have considered the possibility that but Izuku cut him off, assuring him it was fine. He promised to tell her that All Might said hiss before continuing to leave the building and head home. As All Might was about to depart, he heard an explosion and realized his pockets were empty. At the market district, All Might and Izuku arrived at the scene, witnessing chaos unfold. The sludge villain they had previously captured was now loose, and both felt a sense of responsibility for the situation. Izuku attempted to get a better view and noticed a girl with purple hair doing the same. His attention was drawn forward when he realized the villain had taken a hostage, and he was met by the familiar ruby eyes of Katsumi Bakugo. The noise from the crowd and the heroes filled the air, but Izuku focused on the girl beside him. He pointed out the villain's vulnerabilities, and the girl nodded in agreement. With determination, he spun around and threw his bag at the villain's eyes, causing it to roar in frustration. The girl skidded to a stop, preparing to assist him. Izuku leaped into action, landing on the villain's teeth, forcing them apart with his legs. He reached in and pulled Katsumi free with relative ease, then delivered a powerful punch to the villain's eyes as the girl and Katsumi retreated to safety. "Backdraft now," Izuku called out, signaling one of the nearby heroes. Backdraft responded swiftly, channeling all his strength into a punch that tore through the villain, reminiscent of All Might's iconic moves, though on a smaller scale. As Izuku made his way back to the bystanders, he was quickly surrounded by news reporters, all clamoring for answers about his actions. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 approached the reporters, asserting control over the situation. He acknowledged Izuku's bravery but reminded him of the dangers involved and the necessity of having a hero license before intervening in such situations. Izuku, feeling a mix of pride and disappointment, nodded in response. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 then turned to the purple-haired girl, reminding her of the same caution. Izuku introduced himself, extending a handshake, and the girl accepted, introducing herself as 𝗬𝗓𝗍 𝗵𝗏𝗍. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 was taken aback that the two had not known each other prior to this moment, questioning how they had worked together so seamlessly. Both Izuku and 𝗬𝗓𝗍 expressed their surprise at the inquiry, clarifying that they were both quirkless. The crowd shared a collective astonishment at the realization that two quirkless kids had saved someone from a villain when even heroes had struggled. Izuku offered to walk 𝗬𝗓𝗍 home, and she accepted with a smile, causing a warmth to spread across his face. Walked, they engaged in conversation about their families, interests, and hobbies until Izuku broached a more serious topic. He inquired about her high school plans, prompting a slight flinch from 𝗬𝗓𝗍. She revealed her aspiration to attend UA and become a hero, but her expression turned somber as she lamented her lack of a quirk. Izuku, determined to uplift her spirits, reassured her that being a hero was not solely about having a quirk. He cited Eraserhead, a hero whose quirk disabled others but did not diminish his own strength, emphasizing that true heroism lies in the willingness to help others. 𝗬𝗓𝗍's eyes glistened with unshed tears as Izuku spoke, his encouraging words resonating deeply with her. He concluded with his signature smile, affirming that 𝗬𝗓𝗍 𝗵𝗏𝗍 could indeed be a hero. At this point, tears streamed down her face. She expressed her gratitude to Izuku as she wiped her eyes. He suggested they clean a nearby beach, which was littered with trash, as a way to prepare for the UA entrance exams in 10 months. He also offered to teach her how to fight. Just as she was about to respond, a voice interrupted them. Minoru, a boy with purple hair resembling a cluster of ball, jumped over the fence and landed next to them. 𝗬𝗓𝗍, feeling a mix of annoyance and protectiveness, asked if he had been eavesdropping. Minoru raised his hands defensively, explaining that he had only caught the last part of their conversation while doing gardening for his mother, who was upset with him for taking some strawberries. 𝗬𝗓𝗍 introduced Izuku to her twin brother, Minoru, explaining his quirk, which allowed him to detach the ball from his head and stick them to anything except himself, with the ball growing back immediately. She was excited about the training opportunity with Izuku. Izuku proposed they meet at Dagobah Beach the next day and mentioned he would bring his sister along since his parents needed some time alone. He welcomed Minoru and their parents to join as well. Curious about Izuku's sister, Minoru asked about her. Izuku explained that her name was Yuki Midoriya, and she had two quirks, Erasure and Death's Grant. He clarified that they were not twins, as she was a month shy of being 4 years younger than him. He waved goodbye to the twins as he left. Minoru remarked that Izuku would make a good brother-in-law, causing 𝗬𝗓𝗍's face to turn bright red. They both laughed as they entered their home, where their mother greeted them. She was puzzled as to why Minoru had come through the front door when he was supposed to be working in the backyard but dismissed it, assuming he had jumped the fence when 𝗬𝗓𝗍 arrived. Their mother asked what was going on, and Minoru excitedly summarized that 𝗬𝗓𝗍 had made a friend who offered to train her for UA, despite her being quirkless. 𝗬𝗓𝗍 could only nod, still blushing from the earlier conversation. Their mother, Koton, expressed her happiness with tears in her eyes, wrapping them both in a bear hug. She then inquired about their plans, wanting to know where and when they would be training, who the boy was, and if anyone else would join. 𝗬𝗓𝗍, feeling pumped, explained that they would be cleaning Dagobah Beach for strength training, and Izuku would teach her to fight. She mentioned that he would bring his sister and that it was fine for Minoru and their mother to come along. Koton's eyes widened when she heard Izuku's name. She asked if his father was Hisashi Midoriya, which confused 𝗬𝗍𝗍. After confirming, Koton explained that Hisashi Midoriya was a hero who taught at UA. Both 𝐕 and Minoru were astonished to learn this. Koton continued, revealing that Hisashi's hero name was One for All, and he was currently the number 9 hero in Japan, known for displaying a multitude of different quirks. She smiled, telling them they were in for some excellent training. Yuki was in her room, captivated by a video of her favorite hero's debut, All Might's first rescue. When Izuku entered, he noticed the tears welling in her eyes. She called out to him, asking if she could be a hero. After a moment of contemplation, he assured her that she could, even without a quirk. Hope blossomed within Yuki as she questioned him further. Izuku explained that being a hero didn't require a professional status. Many people were heroes simply by being there for others, just like their parents. He emphasized that a hero is someone who helps others, and his words filled Yuki with warmth. She rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him in gratitude. Izuku, feeling a sense of responsibility, encouraged her to prepare for bed while he sang her a song. As she excitedly got ready, he returned to her room, ready to perform. As Yuki drifted off to sleep, Izuku focused on creating 2 small orbs of light, whispering into them until they grew larger and more colorful. He gently placed the orbs on her forehead, watching as they were absorbed into her body. He hoped she would become the person she wanted to be before quietly leaving the room. Unbeknownst to him, Yuki was not fully asleep. She had witnessed her brother's quirk and felt a smile spread across her face as she succumbed to slumber. To be continued. Yuki Midoriya, age 13 when Izuku is in UA, currently has no quirk. Her family includes Hisashi Midoriya father, Inko Midoriya mother, and Izuku Midoriya brother. She admires Izuku, All Might, Class 1A, Eraserhead, and Toga, while disliking bullies and quirk discrimination. Yuki possesses an incredibly open mind, allowing her to befriend even villains, as she does not fear death due to her quirk. Izuku taught her to fight, emphasizing the importance of self-defense. Her quirk, Death's Grant, allows her to come back to life with an ability related to the manner of her death. However, she can only use one ability at a time and experiences slightly more pain than usual. She cannot gain powers from suicide, a precaution Izuku took to prevent her from recklessly seeking power. If she dies due to negligence such as drowning, she can still acquire a new ability. Yuki also has a second quirk, Erasure, which enables her to temporarily disable the quirks of anyone she looks at, as long as she maintains eye contact. This quirk has its drawbacks, including the need to avoid blinking and causing her eyes to feel dry. Mutation quirks are immune to her ability, and her hair floats when her quirk is active, indicating to others when she is using it. To be continued. The next day, Midoriya household Izuku called out to his sister Yuki, urging her to hurry as they were heading to the beach. Yuki shot up at the mention of the beach, her eyes wide with excitement. She couldn't believe it when he confirmed their destination, though her enthusiasm dimmed slightly when he mentioned they would be cleaning it up. Izuku explained that if they didn't, there wouldn't be any beach left to enjoy. He also added that she would get to meet the friend he made the day before, along with her family, which piqued her interest even more. Yuki's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she asked if she would be meeting his girlfriend, causing Izuku's face to turn a deep shade of red. He quickly clarified that she was just a friend, but Yuki teased him, suggesting that it might be more than that. When they arrived at the beach, both siblings were taken aback by the sight before them. The currents had washed up a significant amount of trash, and people had carelessly dumped their belongings, creating a massive mess that stretched for half a kilometer. They stood there for a moment, disheartened, until they heard a familiar voice calling out to them. Kazue, along with her family, approached them. Izuku greeted Kazue warmly, and she expressed her excitement about starting their training. She introduced her parents, and Izuku offered a handshake to her father, Michio, who accepted it with a serious demeanor. Kazue's mother, Koton, introduced herself as well. Izuku introduced himself and Yuki, who waved shyly. Michio then inquired about Izuku's plans for training Kazu. With a smile, Izuku explained that over the next 10 months, they would be cleaning the beach to improve her physical strength. They would also go on runs along the shore with small weights to build stamina and speed. Additionally, he would teach her how to fight and analyze opponents quickly. The family nodded in understanding, but then Izuku mentioned something that surprised them. He revealed that he had not been entirely truthful about his quirk. As he explained, he demonstrated his ability by creating a small ball of light, which he referred to as a blank. He elaborated that it was a quirk without any information, rendering it inactive. However, when he infused it with information, it transformed into a legitimate quirk, which he showcased by summoning fire from his hand. The family stood in awe, and Yuki chimed in, revealing that this was how she had acquired her own quirks. When Kotone asked what Yuki's quirks were, Yuki explained that her first quirk, Death's Grant, allowed her to return with a new ability each time she died, though it came with certain drawbacks. Her second quirk, Erasure, enabled her to temporarily disable the quirks of anyone she looked at, but it had its limitations as well. The family listened intently, surprised by the revelations. Kezue then questioned why Izuku had chosen to share this information, to which he replied that he wanted to offer her a quirk. The news astonished them, especially Minoru, who had witnessed his sister face years of bullying. Izuku clarified that while it would require effort and would be given in 8 months, he wanted to ensure it suited her perfectly. He reassured Kezue that even without a quirk, she could still become a great hero. Kezue expressed her gratitude with a hug, making Izuku blush slightly. Kotone, with tears of joy in her eyes, thanked Izuku for helping Kezue pursue her dreams and for the opportunity to gain a quirk. Izuku responded with his trademark smile, confident that Kezue was deserving of the chance to grow into the hero she aspired to be. As they began their journey together, Yuki and Minoru exchanged knowing glances, sensing the budding connection between Kezue and Izuku. Thus, the 10 months of training and growth commenced for Kezue and Izuku. To be continued. Kezue felt exhausted as she collapsed onto the warm afternoon sand. The litter that had once surrounded her now cleared away. It had been nearly 8 months since she began her training with Izuku, and she had developed a noticeable amount of muscle. Izuku mentioned that if she was ready, he could grant her a quirk. Kezue sat up in surprise, having completely forgotten about it while focusing on her preparation for UA and enjoying her time with Izuku. He smirked, having noticed her distraction. Izuku had been teaching her to analyze situations, and she had developed a habit of mumbling her thoughts aloud. Curious, Kezue asked how much he had heard, her face turning red. Izuku feigned ignorance and teased her about forgetting. He then pulled out a notebook titled Kezue's Quirk Analysis Volume 1 and explained that it contained information about her quirk, inviting her to add anything she wanted. With a smile, he created a small ball of light that grew in size and offered it to her, saying she had earned it. Kezue accepted the quirk, feeling its energy flow through her. Izuku wished her a happy birthday, and in her excitement, she tackled him into a hug, causing him to blush slightly as he returned the embrace. A boy nearby watched in awe, still amazed that someone could create quirks. Suddenly, he heard a voice asking why he was watching Izuku and Kezue. He turned to see a girl with white hair and blue eyes. She introduced herself as Yuki Midoriya, Izuku's sister, and offered to introduce him to her brother. The boy eagerly accepted, expressing his admiration for Izuku. Yuki found his enthusiasm amusing, explaining that it was unusual to see someone so excited about her brother. The boy, relieved, mentioned his own quirk, which he felt was weak. Yuki listened intently as he shared his struggles and his longing to become a hero. When Yuki asked him to demonstrate his quirk, he showed her his hardening ability, which transformed his arm into a rocky texture with red streaks flowing through the cracks. Izuku's voice suddenly interrupted, revealing that the boy was the 9th holder of One for All. The boy, Eijiro Kirishima, was stunned to learn that Izuku knew about One for All and its history. Izuku explained that the first holder was his uncle and the 7th was their grandmother, leaving both Kirishima and Yuki surprised. Curious, Kezue and Yuki inquired about One for All, and Kirishima panicked as Izuku calmly explained that it was a stockpiling quirk passed down through generations, growing stronger over time. Kirishima was in awe, realizing that the person he admired had such deep knowledge of the quirk's legacy. Izuku then proposed accessing the past users of One for All, which sent Kirishima's mind racing with questions. Izuku reassured him that it was up to him and the past users, inviting him to join them for training the next day. The following morning, All Might and Kirishima arrived at the beach. All Might was surprised to see the beach cleaned to such a degree, as he had initially planned to have Kirishima clean a section of it himself. Now he was here, in front of a perfectly clean beach after being told by Kirishima that there was a boy who knew about One for All and was apparently related to the 1st and 7th users. All Might felt uneasy about this revelation. To his knowledge, only Nizu, Night Eye, Recovery Girl, and Gran Torino were aware of it. Unless one of them had been affected by an aging quirk, he had no idea who this person could be. Kirishima greeted him, and All Might turned to see the boy who had made his earlier comment true 8 months ago. He had been searching for Izuku Midoriya to offer him One for All. Next to Izuku stood a girl about 3 to 4 years younger, along with 2 teens with purple hair, one of whom All Might recognized as a girl he had once disappointed, filling him with regret. He suggested they discuss One for All for One, and All for All. All Might was astonished. This boy had not only inspired countless dreams with his words but had also jumped in to save a girl from a villain. Now, he was aware of One for All for One, and a new quirk that seemed connected to the others. Kirishima, curious, asked Izuku about the other 2 terms. Izuku explained that All for One was the villain who had opposed One for All since the dawn of quirks, while All for All was the quirk of All for One's son, which was also his own quirk. All Might and Kirishima were taken aback, especially All Might, realizing that this boy had been lying about being quirkless and was the son of his most dangerous enemy. Kazuo inquired about the reasons behind the conflict. Izuku began to explain that All for One, who had the ability to take, use, and give quirks, had succumbed to the drawbacks of his power, developing an insatiable hunger for quirks. He had disregarded the consequences for others, focusing solely on his own strength. His younger brother, believed to be quirkless, opposed him. In a misguided attempt to convince him, All for One forced a stockpiling quirk onto him, which had the opposite effect, revealing that the younger brother actually possessed a quirk that allowed him to pass his power from one person to another, creating a lineage of heroes who fought against All for One until he was ultimately defeated. Izuku paused, and All Might understood where this was heading. The conflict ended when All for One fell in love with a woman named 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐻, which surprised All Might. Kirishima asked what had transpired between them. Izuku shared that they had started as friends, eventually becoming lovers, then husband and wife, and finally parents. Kazuo questioned whether 𝐒𝐭 had known about All for One's past actions and how she had reacted upon discovering the truth. All Might was equally curious about how she could love someone who had caused so much pain. Izuku recounted her words, expressing that she saw Hisashi Midoriya as the man she loved, not the villain he once was. Kazuo was captivated by the story, while All Might listened intently. All Might expressed disbelief, recalling that he had defeated All for One 5 years ago. Izuku clarified that while he had defeated the man, he had not killed him. The true All for One had died 29 years earlier. The person All Might had fought was One for All, a hero who had been pivotal in Nizu's villain rehabilitation program. Izuku noted that All for One had been hospitalized for a significant time, and he was surprised that Grandma Chio had not informed All Might. This revelation sent a chill down All Might's spine, and he stuttered in surprise, which astonished everyone except Izuku. Izuku explained that he had been training with Nizu, Eraserhead, and Grandma Chio to control his quirk, which allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks. He elaborated that there could be all quirks for all people, just as with his father's quirk, which allowed for all quirks for one person, while All Might's quirk represented one quirk for all. All Might was stunned, realizing he was the only one unaware of this information. Curious, he asked who else knew about this. Izuku listed everyone present, including his parents, Gran Torino, Grandma Chio, Nizu, Eraserhead, and one other person. He mentioned his intention to reveal his quirk to everyone at UA, likely during the sports festival. Kazuo expressed concern that people might befriend him solely to gain strong quirks. Izuku smiled warmly, explaining that he would enter UA quirkless to prove that someone without a quirk could still be a hero. He wanted to build trust with those who respected him despite his quirklessness, assuring Kazuo that he trusted her and the others as well. Kirishima was taken aback, unable to believe that Izuku trusted him after just meeting. Izuku confirmed this with a bright smile, prompting Kirishima to return the gesture. Yuki then asked about Izuku's earlier comment regarding bringing back the past users of One for All, causing All Might to choke in surprise, which brought a smile to Kazue's face. "How can we bring them back?" he shouted in frustration. Izuku explained that One for All stores not only the soul of its user but also their quirk. He needed to create a quirk that would allow those souls to inhabit new bodies that matched their old ones, as long as they desired it. Kirishima and Kazue were curious about the conditions of this revival. Izuku mentioned that some users might be content with their current state and may not wish to return. Therefore, he planned to keep the offer open indefinitely and ensure that the quirk would allow them to be seen by anyone with any of the quirks they had discussed, including past holders. With excitement, Kirishima agreed to proceed. Izuku invited him to stay for some quirk training afterward, which could help with One for All. Kirishima nodded in acceptance. Izuku extended his hand, and a small ball of light appeared, gradually growing larger before splitting into two. He handed the second ball to Kirishima, who accepted it with some hesitation. Suddenly, 6 ghostly figures emerged around them, and Izuku began distributing duplications of the quirk, allowing everyone present to witness the spectacle, which surprised them all. A bald man with goggles questioned what was happening, while another man with white hair suggested that something had occurred with One for All. Izuku introduced himself to the past holders, capturing their attention, especially the white-haired man. The bald man asked for clarification, and Izuku took the opportunity to explain his quirk, All for All, which allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks. The past users felt uneasy about the name, but Izuku continued, stating that he had developed a quirk that could allow them to be revived if they wished. This revelation elicited gasps from the vestiges, followed by a heavy silence. The white-haired man accepted the offer but had a question about his brother. Izuku confirmed that All for One was no longer a villain, which shocked the other past holders. He revealed that All for One had become a hero, adopting the name One for All. The first holder smiled warmly at the mention of his brother's new identity. Proud of his brother, the first holder stepped forward, ready to proceed. Izuku instructed Kirishima to place his hand on the man's shoulder. To everyone's surprise, Kirishima's hand made contact, and a warm glow enveloped the first holder until he fully materialized. Izuku embraced him, and the man reciprocated the hug. Izuku reassured the others that the quirk's offer would always be available, held by the 9th holder, so they shouldn't feel pressured to decide immediately. The past holders smiled back before fading away. Izuku then suggested they begin training, reminding his uncle that he could still use One for All, but at the power level of the 9th holder, which would be significantly less than his original strength. The first holder, puzzled, asked if Izuku knew his name, as he had only referred to him as Uncle. Izuku admitted he didn't know, explaining that his father had difficulty discussing him. The first holder introduced himself as Izuru Midoriya, leaving Izuku astonished at the similarity of their names. Izuku introduced himself and then took his sister's hand, presenting Yuki as his little sister and Izuru's niece. Izuru was taken aback, realizing he had both a nephew and a niece. Yuki playfully remarked that the purple-haired girl was Izuku's girlfriend, prompting both Izuku and Kazue to deny it in unison, their faces turning a bright shade of red. Minoru and Izuru joined in the teasing, making light-hearted comments that only deepened their embarrassment. Kirishima intervened, suggesting they focus on quirk training instead. All Might offered to help but quickly retreated under Kazue's intense gaze, deciding to leave to handle crime, though he really needed a break after maintaining his hero form for so long. Minoru commented on the interesting turn of events, and Izuku shifted the focus back to training. With 2 months until UA, Kazue had just received her quirk, Kirishima was still adjusting to One for All, and Uncle Izuru had just gained a significant power boost. Izuku hoped Yuki wouldn't have any new abilities to MSTR and noted that Minoru still had potential ways to utilize his quirk. Just then, a voice called out to Yuki, capturing Izuku's attention. He turned to see a girl his age with blonde hair styled in messy buns, cat-like eyes, and slightly larger canines. Izuku suspected that Yuki had developed a cat-like quirk, but the absence of ears or a tail led him to believe it might be related to BLD consumption. After 5 hours of quirk training, he noted that Yuki had unfortunately gained some form of hemokinesis over her own BLD. He wondered and feared how she could have developed such a quirk. Kirishima had increased his one-for-all usage from 8% to 10%, while Izuru had advanced from 7% to 20%. Kazuo had learned to copy one quirk at a time, excluding mutations, and Minoru had slightly increased the number of ball he could produce before feeling dizzy. Yuki called out to Himiko, asking how she was doing, which drew the attention of everyone present. Himiko replied that she was getting better. Izuku recognized their connection and sighed, realizing it was linked to Himiko's new ability. He introduced himself, extending his hand, which Himiko accepted with a smile. However, Izuku couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed by the messiness of her hair, especially since Yuki trusted him to help with such things. Curious, Izuku asked how Himiko knew his sister. Himiko flinched slightly at the knowing tone in his voice. Yuki explained that she had met Himiko the previous day and mentioned her past as an ex-villain. Himiko tensed at Yuki's bluntness, worried about how the others would react. Izuku turned to her slowly, asking about the circumstances that led her to that life. Himiko hesitated, revealing that her quirk was related to her parents and her BLD-related abilities. Izuku guessed that her parents didn't react well to her quirk, and he expressed his willingness to confront them on her behalf, his tone filled with an intensity that surprised everyone, even Himiko. She asked why he would help her, and Izuku explained that Yuki trusted her and that he understood the struggles of those with quirks, especially given his own experiences. Himiko quietly revealed that her quirk was called Transform, allowing her to take on a person's appearance by tasting their BLD, with the duration depending on the amount consumed. As she spoke, she noticed Izuku and Kazuo engrossed in their books, both writing furiously. Izuku's book was titled Quirk Analysis Volume 23, while Kazuo's read Kazuo's Quirk Analysis Volume 1. Their focused expressions were a mix of excitement and determination, which both terrified and fascinated Himiko and Kirishima, while Minoru and Yuki remained unfazed, accustomed to such behavior from the two. Izuru watched with enthusiasm, recognizing a kindred spirit in Izuku who shared his passion for quirks. When the two boys finally closed their books, Kirishima asked what they were doing. Yuki explained that Izuku and Kazuo were quirk enthusiasts, and their mumbling was a habit Izuku had developed over time. Himiko, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness, asked if she could see their notes. They nodded and placed the books on a nearby bench for everyone to view. The detailed analyses amazed everyone, with both books containing extensive information about her quirk, including potential weaknesses, possible evolutions, training methods, and career paths. To Himiko's surprise, both analyses suggested that she could become a hero, specifically an underground hero, which puzzled Kirishima, Izuru, and herself. Izuru inquired about what an underground hero was. Izuku explained that it was similar to being a vigilante, as they often operated outside the public eye and were considered true heroes, who fought against various threats, from petty criminals to larger organizations. He shared that his favorite hero was an underground one named Eraserhead, who had a quirk that allowed him to nullify others' powers. Himiko felt overwhelmed with emotion. When she had first met Yuki, it had been under dire circumstances, as she had attempted to obtain Yuki's BLD with a knife. However, when Yuki unexpectedly revived, she not only didn't flee but sought friendship instead. In just 30 minutes, Himiko had opened up about her past, and Yuki had helped her regain a sense of normalcy, steering her away from her darker impulses. They exchanged numbers, and that night, Himiko felt a sense of happiness she hadn't experienced before. To her surprise, Yuki texted her later, inviting her to meet at the beach the following afternoon for training, mentioning that her brother was quite skilled in combat. Himiko had been overjoyed for several reasons. She had made a friend, that friend continued to communicate with her, that friend believed she could be a hero, and that friend was willing to help her train, or at least find someone who could. When Himiko arrived, she honestly expected to meet at least a police officer or a hero, not a boy who turned out to be her brother, training others her age alongside an adult on controlling their quirks. Upon meeting her, He greeted her and listened to her reasons for wanting to become a villain. He suggested confronting her parents about how they treated her, analyzed her quirk, and dismissed heroism as a career option. 𝗵𝗂 felt tears streaming down her face as she expressed her gratitude. Kirishima noticed a blank space on the side and inquired about it. Izuku explained that it was for a drawing of 𝗵𝗂, which he usually saved until he got home or had some free time. Then he turned to her, his tone shifting slightly. He asked if he could fix her hair, which surprised her. Her mother was the only one who ever did her hair, and she had never put much care into it. 𝗵𝗂 nodded slightly, and Izuku got to work. Izuku finished quickly, and the result was astounding to 𝗵𝗂. He had put so much care into it, and she could feel that in the way he handled her hair. It made her happy that someone was focusing on her in such a thoughtful way. She thanked him, and he responded with a bright smile. Yuki then called out to Izuku, asking if 𝗵𝗂 could train for UA with them. 𝗵𝗂 was astounded. She thought she was coming to train to be a hero, but that seemed impossible. She hesitated, saying it was fine and that she didn't have to join them, but Izuku encouraged her, saying she was welcome to join. He explained that they had 2 months left and he planned to focus more on quirk application and fighting instead of the strength training he had done for the past 8 months. He asked if she was alright with that, and when she nodded he said they should get started. To be continued. Kazuo admired the towering building, exclaiming how impressive it was. Minoru agreed, sharing in her awe. Izuku suggested they get going, but before they could move, Katsumi approached them. She confidently declared that Izuku, especially being quirkless, didn't stand a chance and should give up. The others were frustrated by her attitude, especially since Izuku had always been kind to them and had helped them grow stronger. Despite her taunts, Izuku simply smiled. He referred to her as Miss 0 to 132, which only fueled her anger. Katsumi shouted in frustration before storming off. Kirishima, confused, asked what Izuku meant by Miss 0 to 132. With a mischievous grin, Izuku explained that it represented her record, 0 wins and 132 losses. 𝗵𝗂 burst into laughter, confirming the absurdity of her losing streak. The group shared a hearty laugh, especially considering her explosive quirk. However, Izuku reminded them they needed to hurry or they would be late. In the presentation room, Hisashi greeted everyone with enthusiasm. Nizu had decided to observe how he would handle the presentation, especially after Aizawa's complaints about Hisashi's loudness. Hisashi introduced himself as One for All, a teacher and hero, and began explaining the practical exam. He described it as similar to a video game, where students would earn points by defeating 3 types of robots: 1-pointers, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers. Suddenly, a boy with dark blue hair and glasses interrupted, pointing out a discrepancy in the pamphlet regarding the number of robots. Hisashi remained calm despite his irritation. Izuku interjected, clarifying that the 4th robot was a 0-pointer, which was best avoided. He pointed out that the boy had disrupted the presentation and should be more considerate. The boy grumbled and sat down, while Hisashi thanked Izuku for his input and reiterated the presence of the 0-pointer. The students responded with a unified cheer of plus ultra. In the examination area, Izuku stood ready in his attire: a black sleeveless shirt, a dark green jacket tied around his waist, white gloves with blue stripes, dark green combat breaths, and signature red high tops. He noticed a nervous girl with brown hair but shifted his focus when the gates opened. Ignoring the calls from others, he dashed inside, surprising his peers. As he swiftly defeated robots, President Mike encouraged the students to hurry. In the monitoring room, Nizu observed the students' performance, noting that 5 had rushed in immediately, a significant improvement. Aizawa, sipping coffee, claimed dibs on them, surprising everyone since he usually showed little interest in students. Midnight questioned what made those 5 special, and Nizu confirmed they were the top 6 performers. Back with Izuku, he calculated his score and spotted a cluster of robots to defeat. However, a rumble caught his attention, revealing the giant 0-pointer. Concerned for the safety of others, he noticed everyone fleeing from the danger. Frustrated with their cowardice, he heard a cry for help and rushed toward it. He found the brown-haired girl trapped under rubble, quickly freeing her and carrying her to safety. As the time limit approached, President Mike announced the end of the exam. An elderly woman began tending to the injured, and when she reached Izuku, she greeted him warmly. Izuku introduced the girl he rescued, explaining her injuries. The woman, recovery girl, nodded and encouraged Izuku to leave, mentioning that Aizawa had already claimed him and his friends. Izuku nodded in acknowledgement, ready for whatever came next. The other students were stunned. This boy referred to Yue's healer as Grandma, and his family was somehow allowed to enter Yue without participating in the exam. One blue-haired boy watched him leave, deep in thought. He admired the boy's bravery in throwing himself into danger to save a girl. He would have done the same if it weren't a test. He wondered if there were points for rescuing people, realizing that this boy was truly a better student for noticing that. At the gates, Izuku waved to his friends. They greeted him enthusiastically, and he asked if they were ready to go. Hisashi joined them, walking with them until they reached the station. He decided to head home while Izuku would walk back with the others, planning to confront Himiko's parents about her situation, perhaps not in the gentlest manner, since she was willing to show him her home for the first time. On the way to Himiko's house, Izuku asked how she felt she did in the exam. Himiko expressed her excitement about destroying all the robots, and Izuku shared his frustration about other contestants who had ignored a girl trapped under rubble, about to be crushed by the zero-pointer. Himiko was shocked and hoped those students would be expelled early. Izuku explained that Aizawa, their teacher, had a reputation for expelling students he deemed lacking in potential, which intrigued and frightened Himiko. When they arrived at her house, Himiko felt a mix of fear and anticipation. She called out to her parents as they entered. Her mother greeted her warmly, while her father commented on the rarity of Himiko bringing friends home, hinting at the challenges of her quirk. Izuku, sensing the tension, feigned ignorance about her quirk and recorded the conversation on his phone. Her father described her quirk in a way that made it sound frightening, which surprised Izuku. As her parents continued to make negative remarks about her, Izuku decided to intervene. He revealed his recording, much to the shock of both Himiko and her parents. He explained that the incriminating comments could be used against them, intensifying the emotions in the room. He then suggested they leave, emphasizing the importance of keeping Himiko safe before entering Yue's hero course, which caught her parents' attention. Izuku explained that Himiko had taken the entrance exam for Yue and that one of the teachers had directly accepted her into his class, highlighting her outstanding performance. Her parents quickly realized the potential wealth and power their daughter could attain. Before they could apologize, Izuku urged Himiko to leave, and she nodded, ignoring her parents' pleas. Once outside, Himiko felt a sense of safety and asked Izuku if his parents would consider adopting her, as she already viewed him and Yuki as siblings. Izuku assured her that his parents would be more than willing to adopt her, expressing his own feelings of sisterhood toward her as they headed to the Midoriya household. When they arrived home, Izuku greeted his family, and his father welcomed them warmly, inviting Himiko into the living room. She was surprised to learn that One for All was Yuki and Izuku's father. To be continued. She had never met them before. Most of their in-person communication had taken place on the beach with Minoru, Izuru, and Kazuo. Izuru walked into the living room, curious about a situation labeled Q-N-A-D. Hisashi was overwhelmed to see his brother again, and once he grasped the situation, he offered numerous apologies. After that, the family of four comfortably welcomed a fifth member. Although Izuru had his own house just down the road, he had only moved in a few days prior and still needed to acquire a bed and other furniture, so he was staying with the rest of the Midoriyas. Inko explained from the kitchen that the code was a quirk-based situation involving neglect, abuse, and an adoption suggestion. Hisashi and Izuku had created this code to communicate quickly without drawing attention from prying eyes or ears. Izuku had suggested it, considering Hisashi's previous affiliations. Izuru nodded in understanding and settled down with Izuku, Himiko, and Hisashi. Hisashi inquired about the details. Himiko, an ex-villain whom Yuki had met and trained with, had been walked home by Izuku that day. During the walk, they encountered her parents, who were unaware of her situation and only interacted when they heard Izuku was there. Izuku pretended not to know her quirk and then shared a recording of the conversation with everyone. Izuru was astounded. He was still adjusting to the idea that people without quirks were viewed as outcasts, unlike in his own time. Hisashi pondered the situation and asked for a detailed proposition. Yuki entered the living room, removing her earphones. Izuku explained that they would contact Mr. Tsukachi regarding the matter, and either they or Uncle Izuru would adopt Himiko. He and Yuki already considered her family, along with the others they trained with. Izuku also mentioned that Himiko had taken the UA exam that day, and Mr. Aizawa had already expressed interest in her and the rest of them, so there were no issues there. The room fell silent for a moment. Inko called out from the kitchen that it sounded good. Izuru agreed, expressing his happiness about the adoption, having always wanted to be a dad. Hisashi nodded in agreement and turned to Himiko, asking how she felt about being adopted by Izuru. Himiko was stunned. While she had improved her outlook on people since meeting Yuki, Izuku, and the others, this was still unbelievable for her. Although Izuku had said they would adopt her, she hadn't truly believed him at the time. Timidly, she expressed her longing to be adopted. Hisashi stood up from the couch and dialed a number on his phone. He informed Tsukachi about the situation, mentioning Himiko's name and that Izuku had a recording. After a brief conversation, he hung up and turned to face everyone, explaining that the detective would arrive shortly with adoption papers and would be ready to provide an explanation. Inko laughed, mentioning she had prepared plenty of paperwork. She then asked Yuki and Izuku to set up a place for Himiko. Hisashi suggested that Yuki stay to help explain since she was already there and Himiko was joining them. Yuki, feeling a mix of confusion and excitement, sat down next to Himiko. Hisashi then shared that his quirk was called All for One, which allowed him to take, use, and give quirks. Yuki knew about the quirk but was surprised to learn who possessed it, while Himiko was in disbelief. Hisashi also revealed that he had been an ex-villain who went by the same name, leaving both Yuki and Himiko equally surprised, and a silence enveloped the room. Himiko gained Hisashi's attention and asked if he could take her quirk. She clarified that she didn't want a stronger one in return. She felt she didn't deserve a different quirk because of her past actions. Hisashi, along with Izuku, Inko, and Izuru, smiled at her, recognizing her goodness despite her former villainous ways. He reassured her that quirks were powerful, but it took a truly good person to realize that humanity didn't deserve them. He encouraged her to grow and improve herself, helping others avoid the same path she had taken. Hisashi emphasized that her quirk wasn't what defined her, and she should work to deserve it. Himiko nodded confidently, feeling a sense of hope. Just then the doorbell rang. Izuru volunteered to answer it and walked to the door, letting in a man wearing a brown overcoat and carrying a suitcase. The man greeted everyone, asking how they were doing. Hisashi replied that they were well, explaining his quirk to Himiko and Yuki. Tsukachi nodded and joined them, bringing the adoption papers for Miss Toga. He mentioned he would submit them alongside evidence of quirk discrimination, neglect, and abuse. Izuru approached, asking what he needed to fill out. Tsukachi had assisted him in recreating his identity, which was relatively straightforward in a quirked society. Tsukachi handed him a page regarding his information, and Izuru quickly filled it out, relying on his impressive memory. After a few minutes, he completed the form, and Izuku provided Tsukachi with his evidence. Inko then called out that dinner was ready, emerging from the kitchen with a large bowl of rice. She asked Izuku for help in setting the table. He eagerly agreed, rushing into the kitchen and returning with a bowl of circular bread and chicken in an orange sauce. Hisashi, intrigued, asked what cuisine they were trying that day. Inko explained they were having Indian food, specifically a dish called butter chicken, which was her favorite. She always enjoyed exploring new cuisines and sometimes combined various dishes. She invited Tsukachi to join them, but he politely declined, mentioning he still had a few hours left on duty. Inko, understanding, had packed some food for him as a thank you for his help, handing him a small plastic box filled with the meal. Tsukachi expressed his gratitude before leaving the cozy home. 2 weeks later, Izuku, Kazue, Minoru, Himiko, and Kirishima, who had recently dyed his hair red, returned home after training. They praised the invention of air conditioning as they stepped into the cool air of the Midoriya household. Hisashi, smirking with his hands behind his back, remarked on their energy. Izuku, lying on the floor, sarcastically agreed. Hisashi teased that they might have so much energy that he would wait until it was gone to give them their acceptance letters, which only heightened their excitement. He confirmed that the letters were indeed here and had called their parents to inform them he would be handing them out. As he pulled out 4 envelopes, Izuru appeared with one for Himiko. Hisashi clarified that it wasn't a traditional letter but a hologram video. He distributed the envelopes, and Minoru, unable to contain his excitement, asked if they could open them right away. Hisashi explained that their parents had anticipated their enthusiasm and agreed, but they wanted them to watch the videos again at home. The group decided on the order of viewing: Kazue, Himiko, Kirishima, Minoru, and then Izuku. They gathered in the living room to watch each video, noting their scores. Kazue had 68 villain points and 70 hero points, totaling 138. Himiko had 83 villain points and 30 hero points, totaling 113. Kirishima had 129 villain points and 35 hero points, totaling 164. Minoru had 65 villain points and 40 hero points, totaling 105. And Izuku had 151 villain points and 70 hero points, totaling. Minoru complained about being outperformed, to which Kazue pointed out that Izuku had trained more extensively since childhood. Izuku then drew attention to the leaderboard, where Katsumi Bakugo was placed 6th with 90 villain points and no hero points. Himiko laughed, imagining her frustration, while Hisashi noted that it was expected given her attitude. Kazue grinned, teasing that it made the score 0. Meanwhile, Katsumi was in her room, yelling for Izuku, only to be reprimanded by her mother, Mitsuki, from downstairs. Katsumi retorted back defiantly. Back at the Midoriya household, Izuru praised Himiko for her performance, and she hugged him, thanking him and correcting herself from calling him Dad. He smiled warmly and encouraged her to call him that, given he had adopted her. She agreed, smiling back. They shared another hug, but soon noticed the sound of multiple cameras clicking. 5 phones were aimed at them, capturing the moment. Himiko blushed and tried to grab a phone to delete the photos, with Izuru joining her. The others playfully refused to stop, and Hisashi used his barrier quirk to protect them. He suggested sending the photos to Inko and Yuki, while Izuku quickly sent them to trusted friends and family, including Aizawa, Nizu, Tsukachi, Mitsuki, and Masaru, as well as copies to Izuru and Himiko. A week later, the group stood before the gates of UA, now dressed in the school's gray uniform. They took a deep breath and entered. As they approached the door, a voice called out to Kirishima, prompting them to turn and see a girl with pink hair and horns. "Hey, what happened to your hair?" she asked, noticing his new color. He responded awkwardly, saying he wanted a change. "Well, I like it, because now we're horn buddies," Ashido remarked, referring to the spikes of hair that resembled horns. "Yeah, I guess so," Kirishima replied. Mina then noticed the others waiting behind him and asked, "Oh, and who are these guys?" Kirishima introduced his friends, explaining that they were all from the same middle school and now high school. "I'm Izuku Midoriya," one of them said. "Kazue Mineta," another added. "Himiko Midoriya," a girl chimed in. "Minoru Mineta." The last boy introduced himself. Mina greeted them, curious if they were sibling groups. "Kazue and Minoru are siblings, and Himiko and I are cousins," Izuku explained. "Now, it's best we get going, we don't want to get expelled on the first day." The group hurried, leaving Mina feeling uncertain about their seriousness. "Lead the way, Izu," Himiko encouraged as they began to run. The pathway was complicated, but thanks to Izuku's prior visits for training, they navigated it easily. As they approached the classroom, they heard yelling from inside. "Get your feet off the desk this instant. It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen who were here before us," one voice shouted. "Huh, did your old school put a stick up your back or something?" a familiar voice retorted. They opened the door to see a blue-haired boy arguing with Katsumi Bakugo, while the others looked exasperated. "We got off on the wrong foot. My name is Tenya Ida from 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Academy," the boy began. 𝗬𝗵𝗲. So you're an elitist. I'm going to enjoy tearing you to bits, Katsumi replied confidently. You would threaten your own classmate. Are you sure you belong in UA? Ida asked, but then noticed the 6 newcomers. He approached them. Greetings, I'm Tenya Ida from Seoul, we heard, Izuku interrupted. I apologize for my actions at the entrance exam. You noticed the hidden points. You are clearly a better student than I, Ida said, bowing deeply, which irritated Izuku. I didn't notice anything. Someone needed help, so I helped them. That should be the first thing on the mind of anyone trying to be a hero, Izuku replied. Suddenly, a girl with a brown bob cut and a big smile approached. Hey, I'd recognize that messy undercut hair anywhere. Thanks for saving me in the exam. Izuku responded, no problem. Now we should get to our seats. Mr. Aizawa, please get out of your sleeping bag. As everyone turned to see a peculiar yellow caterpillar, Izuku continued, this prank isn't going to work while I'm here. He reached into his bag and pulled out a cup with a sealed lid. My mom made you a coffee this morning, so here. The yellow creature began to move and then bent upwards. Thanks, it said, reaching out for the coffee. A man with black hair emerged from the sleeping bag. My name is Shota Aizawa. I'll be your homeroom teacher. Hurry up, because I expect you to be at the field in your sports uniforms in 10 minutes, he said tiredly. Izuku sighed. You heard him, let's go. I'll show you the way, he said, leading the class out of the room. The group wandered the halls for about 3 minutes before arriving at 2 large doors near the exit to the field. Girls on the right, boys on the left, Izuku instructed before entering the left door, followed by the boys. Once inside, Izuku quickly changed, ignoring the conversations around him until a boy with black hair and tubes on his elbows called out, Hey, check this out. There's a hole that the upperclassmen left. We are truly blessed to be gifted with this. He excitedly went to look through it. Kirishima sighed, knowing how Izuku and Minoru would react. I can't wait to see how they all look, the boy started, but Izuku interrupted by pushing him into the locker. Don't dare. The boy, unfazed, asked, or what? Minoru and Kirishima covered their ears, anticipating Izuku's response. Izuku leaned down, his voice calm yet intense. I will make sure you regret it. Do you understand? The boy quickly shook his head in fear. Good. Now let's head to the field, Izuku said with a bright smile, turning to walk toward the door, leaving everyone stunned by his sudden shift in demeanor. All right, Kirishima said, following him. Sounds good, Minoru added, then turned to the boy. By the way, if you ever do that again, especially to Kazuo, Izuku will pale in comparison to me, he warned. The boy nodded rapidly as the rest of the guys quickly made their way out. On the field, Aizawa waited in his sleeping bag, sipping his coffee as students began to arrive. Once everyone was present, he spoke up. I'm sure you're wondering why you're here. Yeah, aren't we supposed to be at orientation? Asked a floating uniform. That's irrational. UA is different. Its teachers can run their classes as they see fit. You've been taking standardized tests forever, which is also irrational. The government tries to tell people that we're all the same when that's not the case. So, on that note, Bakugo, he said, gaining Katsumi's attention. What was your score on the ball throw in middle school? 68 meters, I think, she replied. Good. Now do it with your quirk, anything goes, just stay in the circle, Aizawa instructed, tossing her a ball. Katsumi caught the object and stepped into the circle, rearing her arm back before shouting, Die. The class collectively sweat dropped, while Aizawa glanced at his phone before turning it to show the class. He informed them it was time to understand their limits, plus ultra style, which excited everyone. A boy with yellow hair and a black lightning bolt declared that they would get to use their quirks, and Mina chimed in with enthusiasm. However, Izuku, Minoru, and Kirishima exchanged worried glances. Aizawa then added a twist. Whoever placed last overall would be expelled, sending a wave of terror through the class. One student protested, expressing their hard work to get into the academy, while a brown-haired girl echoed the sentiment of unfairness. Izuku flinched at the word unfair and passionately reminded them that life itself was often unfair, filled with natural disasters, power-hungry villains, and the struggles of those without quirks. He urged his classmates to focus on overcoming unfairness instead of complaining, calming down as he noticed a boy with half-red, half-white hair flinch at the mention of quirk marriages. Aizawa agreed with Izuku, encouraging the class to get started. The students faced 8 tests: the 50-meter dash, endurance run, seated toe touch, grip test, sit-ups, standing long jump, repeated side steps, and the ball throw. In the 50-meter dash, Izuku stood ready against Katsumi. When the pistol fired, Katsumi shot forward with her explosions, reaching the end first with a time of 4:21 seconds. The robot announced Izuku's time of 4:53 seconds, impressive considering he had not used a quirk. Next, Kazue and Kirishima prepared for their turn. Kirishima activated One for All at 12%, while Kazue copied the gravity-negating quirk of another girl. As the pistol fired, Kazue quickly reached the finish line, clocking in at 0:87 seconds, surprising Aizawa with her effective use of the gravity quirk. Kirishima finished with a time of 2:01 seconds. Minoru faced off against Himiko, using his unique method to gain speed. He threw ball on the ground to propel himself forward, finishing in 5:29 seconds, while Himiko completed the dash in 7:94 seconds. Minoru encouraged her with a smile, and she thanked him, causing him to blush as he recalled the earlier incident in the boys' changing room. During the endurance run, about half the class struggled to last 8 minutes. Remaining were Izuku, Kazue, Minoru, Kirishima, Mina, a girl with black hair in a ponytail, Ida, Katsumi, Himiko, and a boy with 6 arms and a mask. The masked boy lasted another 4 minutes before stopping, alongside Ida, Mina, and a frustrated Katsumi, who was annoyed that Izuku was outpacing her. The girl on the motorcycle, powered by her quirk, eventually ran out of fuel, leaving Izuku and Kazue still going strong. Aizawa was impressed by their training regimen, especially since they had run for an hour each day. In the seated toe touch test, Izuku, Kazue, and Himiko showcased their flexibility, having practiced extensively. Minoru and Kirishima struggled in this area, unable to achieve notable scores. For the grip strength test, the scores were as follows: Izuku 234, 6 kilograms, Kazu 98, 4 kilograms, Kirishima 174, 1 kilogram, Minoru 103, 3 kilograms, and Himiko 234, 6 kilograms, thanks to Izuku's assistance. In the sit-ups, the scores were Izuku 89, Kazue 51, Kirishima 68, Minoru 60, and Himiko. During the standing long jump, Izuku landed in the box, while Kazue and Himiko cleared the jump, the latter benefiting from Kazue's help. In the repeated side steps, Izuku scored 42, Kazue 142, Kirishima 38, Minoru 142, and Himiko also 142, thanks to Minoru's support. As the ball throw approached, the boys, excluding Kirishima and Minoru, grew increasingly intimidated by Izuku's abilities. The girls, however, couldn't help but admire Izuku's strength, with Kazue barely containing her admiration, which did not go unnoticed by Minoru. With only one test left, Minoru used a stack of ball to launch himself faster. Kazue copied the gravity quirk again, while Himiko achieved a respectable score of 82 meters without using her quirk. Kirishima maximized One for All on his finger while using 12% through the rest of his body. Finally, it was Izuku's turn. Aizawa encouraged him to use his quirk this time, surprising the class, as they had seen him achieve impressive scores without it. Katsumi, still skeptical, wondered if he had been quirkless all along. Then she realized he had never explicitly told her if he was quirkless. He mentioned that according to the doctor, he was quirkless and would not be developing one. She mentally chastised herself for not considering the possibility, but now she was curious about what his quirk might be. It had to be powerful for him to keep it hidden. Izuku looked Aizawa directly in the eyes and created a blank space, filling it with information for a quirk similar to a character named Abigail, Fetch, Walker from a game called Infamous. He absorbed the quirk and, using his enhanced strength, threw the ball. Neon energy wrapped around his arms as he launched the ball forward, firing it at seemingly random intervals for about 4 minutes. When he stopped, Aizawa revealed the distance he achieved. Infinity. The class was puzzled. How had he managed to reach infinity by randomly blasting neon lasers? Aizawa instructed them to pay close attention, explaining that although his shots appeared random, each one was necessary and calculated. He then pulled out his phone, stating that they all had a good idea of their standings in each test, and without further ado, he revealed their final scores through a hologram. First, 𝗂𝐁𝗵𝗲 second, Momo Yaoyorozu third, Shoto Todoroki fourth, Katsumi Bakugo fifth, 𝗓𝗏𝗏 sixth, Mizo Shoji seventh, Minor Mineta eighth, Himiko Midoriya ninth, Tsuyu Azui 10th, Izuku Midoriya 11th, Tenya Ida 12th, Mina Ashido 13th, Rikido Sato 14th, Hantasiro 15th, Kyokajar 16th, Fumikage Tokoyami 17th, Mashireo Ojiro 18th, Tsuchako Uraraka 19th, Denki Kaminari 20th, Toru Hagakure Toru, the invisible girl, expressed her dismay at her score, fearing the consequences of her performance. Aizawa bluntly clarified that the threat of expulsion was merely a tactic to motivate them to do their best. The girl with the ponytail apologized for not realizing the situation sooner, causing the class to sweat in response. Izuku reassured her, suggesting that it would be more appropriate to commend Hagakure for impressing Mr. Aizawa. The girl with the ponytail was confused, prompting Izuku to explain that there was no Class 2A this year. Aizawa had expelled all the students he deemed lacking in potential. The fact that Hagakure remained meant that Aizawa saw potential in her. The class felt a wave of fear knowing that the threat of expulsion was real. Aizawa confirmed Izuku's statement, noting that they wouldn't find a single 2A student this year, and he concluded with a mischievous grin. Back in Class 1A, Mina suggested they introduce themselves to distract from the earlier experience, seeking Aizawa's approval. He permitted them to proceed as long as they didn't disturb his sleep, retreating into his yellow sleeping bag. Mina initiated the introductions, stating her name, quirk, likes, dislikes, and hobbies. She introduced herself as Mina Ashido, with the quirk, acid, sharing her love for dancing and her dislike for exams. The invisible girl followed, introducing herself as Toru Hagakure, with the quirk, invisibility, mentioning her fondness for pink and her dislike for bullies. Kazue stood up next, introducing himself as Kazue Mineta, with the quirk, aura manipulation. He expressed his interest in quirks, his disdain for quirk discrimination, and his hobby of quirk analysis. A boy with yellow hair and a black lightning bolt introduced himself as Denki Kaminari, stating his quirk was electrification, and shared his love for video games, dislike for schoolwork, and hobby of gaming. The boy with tape elbows introduced himself as Hantasiro, with the quirk, tape. He mentioned his fondness for girls and that he had no dislikes, enjoying spending time with them. Himiko then introduced herself as Himiko Midoriya, with the quirk, transformation, sharing her love for her cousin, her dislike for her BRH parents, and her hobby of sewing. Katsumi Bakugo introduced herself next, stating her quirk was explosion, her admiration for All Might, her hatred for villains, and that her hobbies were none of their business. 𝗓𝗏𝗏 followed, sharing that his quirks were hardening and power stockpiling, and he liked Crimson Riot, disliked unmanliness, and trained for fun. Tsuyu Azui introduced herself, asking to be called Tsu, stating her quirk was frog. She liked her family, disliked lying, and mentioned she had no hobbies. Tenya Ida introduced himself, sharing that his quirk was engine, and he liked following the rules, disliked rule breakers, and enjoyed reading. Kyokajar introduced herself with the quirk earphone jack, stating her love for music, dislike for perverts, and that she played music for fun. Momo Yaoyorozu introduced herself, sharing her quirk, creation, her love for reading, dislike for seeing people get hurt, and that she had no hobbies. Finally, it was Izuku's turn. He sighed before introducing himself as Izuku Midoriya, stating that his quirk was a secret until he could trust them. He shared his love for his little sister, Yuki, and expressed his strong disdain for quirk discrimination in all its forms. As a hobby, he mentioned that he made music, surprising the class, especially the Dekuwhatif. Kazue and Minoru had known him for almost a year and were aware of his powerful quirk, but they were unaware of his musical talent. Himiko had heard from Yuki that he was quite good. The girls eagerly requested him to play a song, which made most of the boys envious. Izuku asked if they had a specific request, and after a moment of thought, Himiko suggested, "You will be okay." Izuku was taken aback by her familiarity with the song. When he asked how she knew it, she explained that Yuki had told her about it. Reluctantly, Izuku agreed to play, cautioning them not to stand up as he originally sang it to help Yuki fall asleep. The group nodded in understanding and settled down on the floor. Izuku began to sing, closing his eyes as he remembered the day Yuki returned from the quirk doctor. The song flowed from him, a melody he cherished for its sweetness. It always seemed more quiet in the dark. It always felt so stark. How silence grows under the moon, constellations gone so soon. He used to think that he was bold. He used to think love would be fun. Now all his stories have been told, except for one. As the stars began to align, he hoped it would be taken as a sign that everything would be okay. Even if the 7 rings collapsed and the day could be his last, he believed they would be okay. When creation faced its end, he would be there in the sky, assuring them that they would be okay. When Izuku opened his eyes, he saw tears in the eyes of his classmates, along with many shocked faces. They could hardly believe how skilled he was at singing. Kazue wiped away her tears and expressed her admiration, while Jiraiya eagerly approached him, asking how he had discovered such an appealing song, one that seemed to belong to a different era. Izuku explained that he had written it to calm his sister when she had been diagnosed as quirkless. The class gasped in surprise, unable to reconcile this with the fact that she now had 2 quirks. He shared that his quirk was the reason for her abilities, urging them to keep this information to themselves. Ijuru and the others nodded in agreement, and Izuku smiled appreciatively at their trust. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, they prepared to leave. In their classroom, some students were engaged in conversations, while others read or played on their phones until Mina posed an intriguing question about Izuku's quirk. He was momentarily confused by the nickname she used, but she clarified, pointing out his green hair. Izuku sighed and listed those who knew about his quirk, feeling the tension from Katsumi, who was clearly displeased. He warned her not to confront his relatives, recalling the last time he had used her full name, which had resulted in her being unable to use her quirk for a month. The other boys in the class remembered the incident and flinched at the memory. Just then, All Might burst into the room, announcing his arrival in his usual exuberant manner. The class erupted with excitement at the prospect of having him as their teacher. Izuku pointed out that All Might's entrance was anything but normal, and Hisashi, who followed closely behind, agreed. Himiko greeted her uncle, but he reminded her to call him Mr. Midoriya while at school. The class was surprised to learn of the connection between their teacher and Izuku. Hisashi then addressed the class, gaining their attention before handing it over to All Might, who enthusiastically announced that they would be doing battle training. Hisashi explained that the school had created costumes based on their designs, instructing them to grab the box with their number and head to Field Gamma. The excitement in the room was palpable as they prepared for the activity. In the locker room, Kaminari expressed his amazement at Izuku's connection to One for All. Izuku confirmed it, and when Todoroki asked about his family background, Izuku jokingly mentioned a list they had about Endeavor, which piqued Todoroki's interest. As they exited the locker room, Todoroki, Minoru, and Kirishima followed Izuku, while the others scrambled to catch up, still processing the unusual conversation. At Field Gamma, Hisashi approached All Might, acknowledging their complicated history. All Might, in his skinny form, reminded Hisashi of the past, but Hisashi insisted he had not caused Nana's death. He explained that he had considered the impact of his actions on others, particularly on Inko, Izuku's mother. All Might challenged him about Inko's whereabouts, and Hisashi revealed that she was alive, spending time with Sorahiko and waiting for All Might to encounter yet another mishap. All Might was taken aback, realizing that she was indeed alive and that Hisashi knew about her interests. Hisashi's words left All Might confused, but he was relieved to hear that Inko was safe. Hisashi expressed his confusion about how someone could fear him when they were familiar with the she-demon. A chill ran up his spine, and All Might felt the same realization wash over him as they stood in silence for a moment. All Might noted that All for One had changed, no longer the conniving figure he once was. Hisashi acknowledged this change but reminded All Might of the fuel list. When All Might asked about it, Hisashi explained that it was an acronym for Frustrate Endeavor's Life, created by him, Nizu, and Izuku, with Eraserhead's endorsement, although he preferred not to participate. All Might defended Endeavor, stating he was a good hero, but Hisashi laughed dryly, pointing out Endeavor's harsh treatment of his family. He recounted how Endeavor's actions had caused significant distress to his wife and children, leading to severe consequences. All Might was taken aback by this revelation, realizing that even as a villain, he would never have resorted to such extremes. Shifting the topic, Hisashi noticed 7 students approaching in the hallway, prompting All Might to buff up. Izuku wore a green, fire-resistant hoodie with rabbit ears and a red interior, likely hiding numerous knives within it. His backpack contained medical supplies and additional tools. Kazue sported a dark purple singlet with a semi-transparent purple overshirt and a black leather jacket, along with dark purple combat breathes and black high tops. An extendable metal staff adorned her back, equipped with various tools. Minoru's costume was a redesigned sports uniform in dark purple with black stripes, featuring a light purple belt filled with small weapons and smoke grenades. Himiko's costume resembled Izuku's but in crimson, lacking a hood. She had a belt with pouches containing darts designed to extract BLD, along with a backpack for medical supplies. Ijuru, Todoroki, and Jairu also wore interesting costumes, and soon the rest of the students arrived, all in their hero outfits. Hisashi smiled warmly, remarking that the clothes made the pros, while All Might enthusiastically praised the students' appearances. Ida inquired about the day's activities, wondering if they would be conducting urban battles again. All Might clarified that they would not be doing that today, pulling out a script. Hisashi sighed, knowing the script would lead to more questions. He explained that while many hero fights were reported in the news, true villains operated in the shadows, through back-alley deals, kidnappings, and underground lairs. This was the focus of their class that day, a 2v2 heroes versus villains exercise. As All Might fumbled with the script, students began asking questions about scoring, rules, team selection, and whether they could harm their opponents. All Might struggled to manage the chaos, prompting Hisashi to take a deep breath and address each question succinctly. He clarified that there would be no points, rules would be explained shortly, teams would be chosen randomly, and no one could harm their opponents or face expulsion. Hisashi's ability to keep up surprised All Might, who asked how he managed it. Hisashi explained that he had learned to navigate conversations despite a habit of mumbling, allowing him to keep pace with multiple voices. All Might then outlined the situation. Villains had hidden a bomb somewhere in the building, and the students' task was to find and disarm it within 10 minutes. Villains win by either capturing the heroes or defending the bomb in the allotted time. Heroes win by either capturing the villains or the bomb. You capture people by wrapping them in a special tape that we'll provide. As One for All said earlier, teams will be decided by lots, All Might explained, reading through the rules. Ida raised his hand, questioning whether lots were truly the best way to decide teams. Hisashi and Izuku chimed in, stating that heroes don't really get a choice in their partners, so why should they? Ida acknowledged this with an apology for the disturbance and bowed respectfully. All Might then announced the teams. Team A consisted of Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka. Team B had Kyoka Jairu and Denki Kaminari. Team C included Tsuyu Azui and Fumikage Tokoyami. Team D was Tenya Ida and Katsumi Bakugo. Team E was Toru Hagakure and Mashireo Ojiro. Team F featured Himiko Midoriya and Kazuo Mineta. Team G had Minoru Mineta and Mina Ishido. Team H was Mizo Shoji and Shoto Todoroki. Team I included Momo Yaoyorozu and Ijiro Kirishima. And Team J was Hantashiro and Rikido. With that, All Might prepared to reveal the matches. Excitedly, All Might announced the matchups. Team A versus Team D, Team B versus Team C, Team E versus Team H, Team G versus Team J, and Team F versus Team I. He encouraged everyone to get ready. In round 1, Izuku and Uraraka stood outside the building. Uraraka inquired about Izuku's relationship with Katsumi. Izuku explained that they were childhood friends, as their mothers were best friends, and he had hidden his quirk for a long time, leading Katsumi to believe he was quirkless. Curious, Uraraka asked what his quirk was, but Izuku playfully refused to reveal it, stating he planned to showcase it at the end of the sports festival. He wanted to demonstrate that anyone could become a pro hero, even without a quirk. He offered a challenge. If Uraraka could guess his quirk and provide a valid reason, he would give her a gift, just like he would for the rest of the class. He then warned her that Katsumi would likely come after him due to their history, advising her to use that to her advantage and find Ida. He noted that Ida would take the role of the villain seriously, so she should be prepared for his dramatic antics. Izuku shared his analytical skills, explaining that he could quickly assess quirks and personalities, which impressed Uraraka and the others in the monitoring room. He also suggested that Uraraka train to lift weights beyond her maximum, which startled the class. All Might announced the start of the match, and in the monitoring room, everyone except Hisashi and the Deku squad was tense with anxiety over Izuku's analytical prowess. Ijuru remarked on Izuku's selflessness, while Minoru noted that Kazue was approaching Izuku's level of analysis. Momo expressed her concern about the situation, but Hisashi reassured everyone that they would be fine as long as they stayed on Izuku's good side. Himiko expressed her longing to learn analysis from Izuku and his father, which sent a chill through the class at the thought of 4 individuals with such skills. Minoru suggested placing bets on the match, and the class agreed, with most betting on Katsumi, except for the Deku squad, who supported Izuku. Kirishima pointed out that Izuku had fought Katsumi numerous times in the past, and she had lost every match. Hisashi explained that Katsumi had 2 fears, her mother and Izuku when he called her by her real name. This revelation left the class in shock, knowing the extent of Izuku's impact on Katsumi. Todoroki approached Hisashi to inquire about the fuel list, which intrigued the others. Just then, All Might noticed something concerning and shouted a warning to Katsumi. In the building, Katsumi, undeterred, pulled a pin from her gauntlet, unleashing a powerful explosion that surged through the hallway toward Izuku. The force of the blast was immense, causing the structure to tremble and crack, leaving Izuku's whereabouts uncertain amidst the chaos. As soon as Katsumi realized the situation, she began to panic. She thought about how she had harmed someone and questioned her worthiness as a hero. The guilt overwhelmed her as she reflected on her actions, feeling like a monster. She worried about the consequences, fearing that she would be expelled from UA and how devastated her loved ones would be. Just then she heard a voice. Izuku reminded her to always check her blind spots. In a swift motion, he swept her legs out from under her and executed a powerful kick that sent her crashing to the ground. He quickly secured her with capture tape. All Might's voice echoed through the speaker, announcing that Katsumi Bakugo had been captured. Moments later, he declared that the bomb had also been secured, signaling a victory for the heroes. Katsumi stood awkwardly at the back of the monitoring room, reflecting on her choices and actions. The more she thought about it, the more she disliked herself. She had been harsh, especially to Izuku, someone who truly didn't deserve it. During training, she had nearly harmed him. After the test concluded, she had a chance to see Izuku up close, and her heart sank at the sight of his scorched arms. It was no surprise he had managed to take her down using only his legs. Now, he was in Recovery Girl's office, while she waited, feeling isolated as her classmates avoided her gaze. She couldn't blame them, she would have done the same. Whenever a group left for their test, they cast her disapproving looks, except for Mimic. It was round 5 at that moment, with Ditto and Mimic facing off against Ponytail and Rock. Katsumi had previously used unkind nicknames for her classmates but had decided to change them out of regret. Just as the round was halfway through, Izuku returned, fully recovered. The class greeted him cheerfully, but when he looked at Katsumi, she flinched. He approached her and extended his hand. He complimented her on the match, noting how close she had come this time. Katsumi was taken aback, unsure if he was being serious. He pointed out that a more precise shot would have been beneficial, as the large explosion had blocked her vision, allowing him to get behind her. The rest of the class shared her disbelief. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 expressed her frustration, feeling like a monster for nearly harming him. Izuku reassured her that she was not a monster, reminding her that he had never seen her act cruelly. He acknowledged that they had drifted apart since she developed her quirk, but he still considered her a friend. He believed that a true monster would have acted differently, and he wanted to return to being friends. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 smiled, agreeing but also asserting that they would remain rivals. She then claimed to have figured out the nature of his quirk, piquing the interest of the class and Izuku. He encouraged her to share her thoughts. As she explained her reasoning, Izuku created a sound-canceling barrier around them. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 speculated that his quirk was Quirk-Creating, based on what she had learned about his family. Izuku confirmed her guess but added that his quirk allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks, which he called all for all. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 was surprised to have guessed correctly but intrigued by the additional complexity of his quirk. She assured him that she would keep his secret safe. Izuku playfully teased her about her calm demeanor, and they shared a light moment. He then asked her what quirk she would choose if she could have any. After some thought, 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 described a quirk that would help her capture villains, combining elements from her classmates' abilities. Izuku presented her with a glowing ball, claiming it was her new quirk. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 was astonished that he had created a quirk for her, especially after their recent history. Izuku explained that he trusted her and that the quirk's drawbacks would be beneficial for her. He handed her a notebook detailing the quirk's properties, which allowed her to produce tendrils that could cancel others' quirks. However, it required emotional control, as losing focus could lead to chaos. As she read the details, 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 was impressed by the power of the quirk but raised an eyebrow at the requirement of managing her anger. Izuku found humor in her reaction, but she responded sarcastically. He insisted that she accept the gift, emphasizing that it was meant for her. After some hesitation, 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 finally agreed to take the quirk, and as Izuku removed the sound barrier, they noticed that round 5 had concluded with Team F heroes emerging victorious. Himiko, Momo, Kazuo, and Ijuru returned to the room, noticing Izuku's arrival. Ijuru, Kazuo, and Himiko exclaimed with joy as they tackled him into a group hug, causing them all to tumble to the ground. Ijuru remarked on how manly the fight had been, while Himiko expressed her concern for Izuku's safety. Izuku reassured them that he was fine, albeit a bit squished. Hisashi approached and helped him up, commenting on his recovery and expressing surprise at Recovery Girl's ability to heal him so thoroughly. Izuku explained that his skin had become tougher after years of training, which meant most of the damage was superficial. He also mentioned his considerable stamina, allowing for more extensive healing. However, his tone turned serious as he hinted at the gravity of the situation. Hisashi agreed, and the rest of the class looked on in confusion. They all decided it was best to keep this a secret from 𝗏𝗏, which caused the class to sweat nervously. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 took a deep breath and revealed her new quirk, Erase WHP, while questioning why they wouldn't tell Auntie 𝗏𝗏. Hisashi explained that Izuku could be quite terrifying, a trait he attributed to 𝗏𝗏. He shivered at the thought of her potential power, pointing out that her telekinesis could be dangerous, especially concerning their cells. 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 realized the implications and agreed to keep the secret, both of them shivering at the thought. Izuku thanked 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆, flashing his bright smile, and she responded with a hint of embarrassment. In class, Aizawa addressed the students about their hero training. He acknowledged 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆's strong quirk but warned her to improve her attitude, threatening expulsion for any further misbehavior. The class was then informed they needed to elect a class president, which sparked excitement among the students. Aizawa's glare quickly silenced them, and he instructed them to complete the task without disturbing his sleep. As the students began to shout out their nominations, Izuku felt overwhelmed. He tapped 𝗂𝐳𝐵𝗵𝗆 on the shoulder and asked her to use her quirk to calm the class, excluding Kazuo. He then asked Kazuo to create sheets of paper for voting and a basket for collecting the votes. After a few minutes of writing, Izuku gathered the votes and counted them, writing the results on the board. Izuku was declared class president, with Momo and Kazuo as vice presidents. The class cheered, and Izuku promised to do his best in the role. Later, in the cafeteria, Himiko noticed Izuku deep in thought and asked if he was alright. He was curious about who had voted for him. Kazuo and the others expressed their support, while Katsumi explained that many girls likely voted for him due to his actions during a previous incident. She approached the table and Izuku greeted her. Katsumi congratulated him on becoming class president, and he thanked her, though she teased him about his stuttering. Suddenly, alarm blared, announcing a security breach. Panic ensued as students rushed to evacuate. A third-year student mentioned that this was the first breach in 3 years. Izuku urged his friends to stay together, but they were jostled by the crowd. Frustrated, he shouted for everyone to calm down and form an orderly line to exit. As he took charge, Kazuo and Himiko turned to thank him, only to find he had disappeared. Elsewhere in UA, Izuku confronted a man in a black hoodie, who flinched at his presence. Izuku had grabbed one of Himiko's darts for identification purposes. The man, surprised at being caught, responded with a husky voice, revealing that he had gathered the information he needed. Izuku deduced that the man was likely responsible for the breach and the chaos outside. However, the school's information was highly confidential, so either the man was a villain planning to attack the school, an information broker, or someone seeking revenge on a staff member or UA itself. Izuku explained this, and the man appeared stunned. As a student and someone who aspired to be a hero, Izuku felt compelled to ask the man to stop. He didn't know what had led him down this path, but he believed the man could choose a better way. The man grinned from beneath his hoodie. The man began to respond but suddenly turned around, lunging toward Izuku with an open hand, shouting a threat. Before the man could make contact, Izuku skillfully dodged, throwing the man over his shoulder. He attempted to poke the dart from Himiko's costume into the man's leg, but the man grabbed it, causing it to disintegrate in his hand. Izuku quickly jumped back, realizing the man's quirk allowed him to decay anything he touched with all 5 fingers. This meant that as long as Izuku avoided direct contact, he would be safe. The man reached into his hoodie. He then declared a need to escape, and was engulfed in a black mist with a 𝗵𝗲𝗔𝗂 edge, vanishing from sight. Izuku muttered under his breath, knowing the school might be in danger and that he needed to warn the staff. In an unknown location, the man emerged from the mist, entering a bar. He was met by a voice that asked if he had obtained the schedule. The man confirmed he had and was urged to report any issues. He hesitated before admitting that a student had confronted him while he was leaving. The voice inquired if he had dealt with the student, and the man fell silent. He explained that the student had quickly figured out his abilities and had attempted to stab him with a dart, which he suspected was meant to paralyze him. A grin spread across his face as he expressed excitement about encountering such an interesting opponent before facing All Might. The disembodied voice cautioned him to never underestimate his opponents and reminded him that once he possessed All for One, he would be unstoppable. The man acknowledged this, identifying himself as Tamura Shigaraki. Later, after lunch had ended and everyone was heading back, Izuku approached Mr. Aizawa to get his attention. He informed Aizawa about encountering someone suspicious during the alarm, explaining that he had taken one of Himiko's darts, but the man had destroyed it. Izuku described the man's quirk, which allowed him to decay things he touched with all 5 fingers. Noticing some classmates arriving, he whispered that they needed to be cautious, as there were several reasons villains might want to attack UA. He then warmly instructed everyone to take their seats and encouraged them to converse until class started before returning to his own seat. As the Deku squad entered the room, Katsumi asked Izuku where he had disappeared to at lunch. He explained that he had needed to talk to Mr. Aizawa about the incident, suggesting that students should not behave inappropriately and that running simulations would be beneficial for practicing responses to such situations. Later, at the Midoriya household, Inko welcomed Izuku and Yuki as they walked inside, noting that their father was still at work. Izuku reassured her that there had been a breach at school, but it was just the press, so there was no need for concern. Inko mentioned that she would start cooking soon and that Himiko and Izuru would be joining them, as Izuru wanted to learn more about cooking. Izuku agreed, and Yuki asked about Izuku's new song. He explained that he was almost done and invited her to watch him record, which made her excited. In Izuku's room, which was relatively large with sky blue walls and white trim, there were 2 guitars and an electric drum set. A medium-sized desk held a laptop and a nightlight, while shelves contained Izuku's quirk analysis books. He had spent years developing quirks for Yuki, grateful that she had made use of death's grant. His bed was a queen single, accommodating his height, and he had a dark silvery quilt and navy blue fitted sheet. A single Eraserhead poster adorned the wall. As Yuki sat on his bed, texting the family about his upcoming song, Izuku prepared for recording. He connected a cable from the microphone to his computer, which was open with recording software ready. Izuku put on his headphones to enjoy the music, even though it was still audible outside. He pressed play and began to sing along to the melody, lost in the moment. Once he finished, he removed the headphones and was met with applause. Turning around, he saw his entire family, except for Hisashi, who was at Yue. A deep blush spread across his face as he felt their admiration. Curious about how much they had heard, he asked them. Himiko responded that they had heard everything, while Izuru complimented the song, saying it was better than his day. Inko and Yuki remained silent, but soon they both shouted in unison that it was amazing, wrapping Izuku in a tight hug. He accepted their affection, feeling overwhelmed but grateful. The next day at school, Kaminari brought up the latest song from Winter's Valley, sparking excitement among his classmates. Jairu agreed that it was cool, while Mina suggested that Izuku was the only one close to the artist's skill. Siro jokingly considered becoming Izuku's wingman, but Himiko teased him about his chances. Kazue wondered who the song was about, and Minoru speculated that it must be someone special. Just then, Aizawa entered the classroom, instructing everyone to sit down and be quiet. He announced an upcoming excursion to an off-site facility, accompanied by All Might and another staff member. Students were given the option to wear their hero costumes or P uniforms before heading outside. As they boarded the bus, Izuku interrupted Ida's orderly instructions, suggesting they simply find their seats as the bus wasn't designed for strict organization. Tsu caught Izuku's attention during the ride and asked why he kept his quirk a secret. He explained that, legally, it didn't exist, and he wanted to demonstrate that a quirkless person could still become a pro hero. Kaminari asked why that mattered, and Izuku reminded them of his song's inspiration, his sister's quirkless diagnosis. He wanted to show that even without a quirk, she could have been a hero. The girls listened intently as Momo inquired about her sister's abilities. Izuku listed them, explaining that his sister had gained powers related to her experiences. He detailed her abilities such as antibiotic BLD, which allowed her to heal others, and water spout, which let her shoot water. Each ability was tied to a past incident, showcasing her resilience and determination to help others, even at great personal risk. His classmates were captivated by the story, feeling a mix of admiration and concern for Izuku's sister and the challenges she faced. That all happened to her. Todoroki began to feel like he had it relatively easy. Izuku explained that 8 of those incidents were caused by villains. From memory, the ones responsible for BLD manipulation, bioelectricity, and flame absorption were all ex-villains now. Quite a few others were at least questioning their previous choices. Sada wondered why they had been villains in the first place. Izuku shared that discrimination played a significant role. He knew one individual who had been abused at home and bullied at school due to their quirk, which was closely related to BLD. Another had suffered abuse even before developing their quirk, leading to a desperate situation where they faked their death to escape their family. There was also a case of a child who had been kidnapped and subjected to harsh treatment for 8 years, holding on to the hope that a hero would rescue them, only to be let down when no one came looking after their escape. Izuku sighed, expressing how messed up the world was, where people were judged solely by their quirks. If someone had a villainous quirk, they were often pushed into that role, while those without quirks faced disgrace. Strong quirks placed individuals on pedestals, and everyone sought to gain favor to benefit from them. The class fell silent, reflecting on their pasts and realizing the truth in his words. Todoroki, however, felt a sense of suspicion regarding the second story, as it bore an uncanny resemblance to his own, especially considering his missing brother, Tuya. The bus soon came to a halt. Aizawa announced that they had arrived, and once the class disembarked, Todoroki pulled Izuku aside. He began to speak about the story that had troubled him. Izuku acknowledged it, revealing that he had been in contact with 𝗬𝗧 for some time and that 𝗬𝗧 was the reason he suggested the fuel list. He expressed that he had already thought poorly of Endeavor, but Todoroki's home life took the cake. Placing a comforting hand on Todoroki's shoulder, Izuku encouraged him to visit his mother, assuring him that his fire was his own and he should use it as he wished. He offered his support if Todoroki ever needed someone to talk to. Todoroki expressed his gratitude, and Izuku invited him to call him by his first name. In turn, Todoroki asked to be called Shoto. The two returned to join the rest of the class, where they learned about the facility they had arrived at from the pro hero 13. She explained that quirks could be dangerous, which was why the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ, was built to teach others how to rescue people with their quirks. As they entered, some students noted All Might's absence. When they pointed it out, Aizawa communicated with 13, who raised 3 fingers. The Deku squad immediately understood what had happened. All Might had used up all his time. Izuku and Kazue sighed in annoyance, though thankfully, the rest of the class did not notice. Suddenly, a sense of alarm filled the air. Shiro pointed out the presence of fake villains, but Izuku quickly sprang into action, realizing the danger was real. He instructed Iida to run back for help, while Aizawa kept a watchful eye on whoever had teleported the villains in. He directed 13 to ensure the safety of the others and told Katsumi to prepare to use her erasure WHP if the teleporter got past Aizawa. The rest of the class was told to follow Protocol 𝗵𝗲 as Izuku leaped into action. 13 shouted in confusion, but Aizawa assured everyone to follow Izuku's lead. Iida hesitated, but Kazue urged him to go. Idru, knowing what to do, focused all his energy into his arm, preparing for a powerful strike. Kazue, recalling Recovery Girl's aura, assisted him. Idru stepped forward, unleashing a brilliant beam of light that shattered the glass above. Kazue used her quirk on him, minimizing the damage thanks to his hardening. The rest of the class watched in awe as Izuku engaged in battle. At UA, Nizu noticed the beam of light and activated the intercom, summoning all teachers to his office. Midnight entered, asking what was happening. Nizu explained that it was a Protocol V, which left the teachers puzzled, except for one. Hisashi inquired about the situation, and Nizu admitted he was unsure but suspected it was related to the USJ. With Izuku and Kirishima present, Hisashi felt they would be safe but insisted they needed to go. He pulled out his phone to call Izuru, who could provide additional support. Elsewhere, 2 individuals spotted the beam of light in the sky and rushed to help, determined to redeem their past mistakes. Back with Izuku, he swiftly dealt with the villains, knocking one down with a kick. He leaped off the fallen foe and threw knives at another while in midair. After landing, he dodged bullets from a villain with finger guns, wincing as one grazed his shoulder but pushing through the pain. He retaliated with a punch that knocked the attacker out and then used the villain as a weapon against others. Izuku held the man tightly, seizing his wrists and directing his fingers toward the other villains. He pressed a specific pressure point, activating his quirk, which caused bullets to begin firing. He aimed for their shins, targeting the area around their Achilles tendons, and nearly every shot found its mark. After unleashing around 400 shots, Izuku released the man and charged forward, stepping on the heads of those he had incapacitated, knocking them out. Suddenly, a rocky man with 4 arms charged at him, boasting about his strength. Izuku met the man's challenge with an intense gaze that seemed to pierce through him. He sprinted forward, leaping over the man and landing on his shoulders. With a swift motion, he grabbed the man's head and twisted it sharply, causing a crack that would leave the man permanently impaired. Meanwhile, in Class 1A, the students watched in shock at Izuku's fierce actions. They were horrified to witness him incapacitate an opponent so ruthlessly. Shiro silently vowed to keep his own actions hidden from Izuku. Katsumi, trembling with fear, wondered what Izuku was capable of if he truly fought back. Eraser questioned why he wasn't intervening, but Aizawa insisted that Izuku was not killing anyone. The students were horrified to see that most of the villains were now lying on the ground, incapacitated. Izawa, frustrated, realized that a misty figure had slipped past him while he blinked. The misty figure introduced himself as a member of the League of Villains, declaring their intent to eliminate all might and acquire all for one. He began to separate the students, but Katsumi, fueled by anger, fought back against the tendrils that wrapped around her. Despite her efforts, darkness enveloped her and nearly all of her classmates, leaving only a few behind. Izuku noticed the mist villain's absence, realizing that his classmates were at risk of being teleported away. He dodged a punch from a villain with metal fists and retaliated with a powerful elbow strike. Just then, Izawa fell through a portal above him. Izuku quickly adjusted his stance, catching Izawa and tossing him toward the villains. Moments later, the mist villain returned, reporting that one student had escaped. The man beside him, with light gray hair and hands covering his body, expressed frustration over the situation. He mentioned a creature called Nomu, which Izuku suspected was the bird-like being standing next to them. The man commanded Nomu to eliminate Izuku. As Nomu lunged at him with incredible speed, Izuku anticipated the attack and flipped backward, landing on the creature's back. He struck with a knife, severing its arm, but to his astonishment, the arm began to regenerate. The man laughed, boasting about Nomu's abilities. Izuku, unfazed, warned the man not to reveal his advantages too freely. He noted that while Nomu might rival All Might, there were quirks that could counter it. Just then, Todoroki and other students arrived, and a grin spread across Izuku's face as he realized they could work together. Todoroki understood the unspoken plan but hesitated, feeling uneasy about using his fire. Suddenly, the doors of the USJ burst open, revealing two men, one covered in scars with black hair and earrings, and the other bald, wearing a yellow jacket and carrying a handheld power pole. They called out to Izuku, offering assistance. Izuku responded with confidence, reminding them that burned cells couldn't regenerate. The bald man surrounded himself with red lightning and vanished, leaving an electric trail before reappearing behind Nomu, restraining its arms. The scarred man leaped forward, using flames to propel himself and landed on Nomu's chest, turning its head to ashes. The man who had mocked Izuku erupted in anger, claiming that Nomu was designed to defeat All Might and that they had cheated. Cheaters, he thought, as he rushed toward Izuku with his hands outstretched. Izuku recognized him from the previous day and stared back with vacant eyes. Kurojirai intervened, urgently calling out to Tamura Shigaraki before creating a portal that whisked him away. Izuku sighed, feeling life return to his gaze. He turned to the two newcomers and smiled. Izawa was about to ask a question when Izuku spoke up, expressing gratitude to Dabi and Cole for their assistance. They both grinned in response. Cole mentioned that they had to help after everything Izuku and Yuki had done for them, and Dabi nodded in agreement, glancing at Todoroki in surprise. Izuku simply nodded back, indicating that it was up to Todoroki whether to engage. Suddenly, the doors burst open again, and Ida announced his arrival with backup. He entered with the teachers, who quickly dealt with the remaining villains outside Izuku's vicinity, rescuing a few trapped students. As they approached, they took in the scene of destruction around Izuku. Izawa, you didn't hold back, Present Mike remarked, observing the chaos. You've caused some serious damage here. It wasn't me, Izawa replied tersely, causing the teachers to flinch in surprise. What do you mean it wasn't you? Midnight asked, while Nizu approached Izuku, thanking him for handling the villains and inquiring if he had any information. The teachers were astonished and terrified by the implication that this teenager had taken down so many foes without a quirk. Izuku explained that the group responsible called themselves the League of Villains. Most of the attackers were weak street thugs, but there were three main threats. One was a corpse at their feet, another was a mist-like man who could create warp portals, and the last had a disintegration quirk that required him to touch his target with all his fingers. They had intended to kill All Might. The staff gasped at this revelation. Nizu pondered the possibility of the villains succeeding. Izuku responded that while All Might could have defeated the bioengineered creature, it would have taken an extraordinary effort, approximately 300 punches beyond his full power. He speculated that someone might possess a similar ability to his father. A week later, Izuku returned to school after a brief break to recover from the attack. He felt the time off was unnecessary. As aspiring heroes, they needed to confront such challenges head-on. As he walked through the halls, he noticed students watching him. He brushed it off until he heard a familiar voice. Itsuka Kendo, the class president of 1B with her orange hair in a side ponytail, greeted him. She asked how he was doing, expressing concern about his recent battle with villains at the USJ. Izuku assured her he was fine, explaining that most of the attackers were merely street thugs. Kendo, however, had heard rumors of a massacre and inquired why it was described that way. Izuku shrugged, acknowledging that he had left many incapacitated but downplayed the severity of the situation. He mentioned that he had used the quirk of a villain with finger guns to take down even more foes, which left Kendo visibly shaken. She asked how he wasn't traumatized by the experience. Izuku reasoned that as a hero he would face far worse than what he had encountered, including death and suffering. If he couldn't handle the consequences of his actions now, how could he face the future? As they reached 1B, Izuku bid her farewell and headed to 1A. There, he was confronted by Nito Minoma, who questioned his association with Kendo. Kendo, however, defended Izuku, warning Minoma not to provoke him. She recounted how Izuku had permanently incapacitated numerous villains without a quirk, instilling a newfound fear in her classmates. In 1A, Kaminari relaxed in his chair, expressing how enjoyable the break had been. Mina agreed, lamenting its end. Izuku called for everyone to take their seats as class was about to begin. Sato remarked on Izuku's calm demeanor despite his recent battle. Izuku announced that they would have 2 weeks off to prepare for the upcoming UA Sports Festival, addressing concerns about the recent villain attack. He reassured them that the school would implement increased security and emphasize the importance of the festival for their future careers as heroes. He also revealed that a special performance by Winter's Valley was planned for the event, which excited the class. As they buzzed with anticipation, Izuku reminded them to focus, as it was still class time. Now, Izuku was excited to share the lineup for the festival. He mentioned that One for All would perform songs like Sweater Weather, Voices, Cradles, Let the Games Begin, and Freaks, which would be spread out over the course of the event. Tsu raised her hand, curious about One for All's connection to Winter's Valley. Izuku explained that he was the son of someone close to him, specifically his wife. Hagakure expressed her enthusiasm, exclaiming how cool it was. Izuku informed the class that Mr. Aizawa was taking a break after a long patrol the previous night, and with Nizu's permission, he would be teaching them today. The students looked surprised at the prospect. Ida pointed out that Izuku wasn't a teacher, but Izuku reassured them, stating he held degrees in physics, quirkology, mathematics, psychology, and chemistry. He noted that they would focus on quirkology, which would help them understand their quirks better and train effectively. He offered to assist anyone during the next 2 weeks at Dagoba Municipal Beach. The class went smoothly until the bell rang, signaling lunch. As everyone packed up, they encountered a crowd of students. Uraraka asked what was happening, and Katsumi explained that they were there to assess the competition. Tetsu from Class 1B approached, claiming he thought they had become arrogant after their encounter with villains. Izuku stepped in, asking what the issue was. Tetsu complained that they seemed overconfident, and some students agreed. Izuku, feeling annoyed, pointed out the dangerous situations they had faced, emphasizing that they had not chosen to be in those life-threatening scenarios. He compared their experiences to a child who lost their mother in an accident, suggesting that no one would think that child felt superior to others. A boy with purple hair interjected, stating that Class 1A was placed on a pedestal simply for passing the physical part of the entrance exam, while others were in general education due to their non-combat quirks. He warned them that if a student from another course performed well in the sports festival, they could take the place of a hero course student, declaring it a challenge. Izuku, feeling frustrated, confronted the boy, asking if he was in general education because of his quirk. When the boy confirmed, Izuku pointed out that it was his responsibility to train his body. He made it clear that he had entered Class 1A without a quirk, emphasizing that it was on the boy if he hadn't trained hard enough. 𝗧𝗏𝗧 realized that Izuku was the one Kendo had warned them about, and he began to sweat nervously. 𝗧𝗏𝗧 stammered that Izuku was the one who had left many villains incapacitated. Izuku responded with a smile, clarifying that he hadn't defeated all of them, only a significant number. He reassured the students that none had died, as he wouldn't let them escape that easily, causing some to feel uneasy. He turned to the purple-haired boy and asked for his name and quirk. The boy introduced himself as Hitoshi Shinso, revealing that his quirk was brainwashing. Izuku stifled a laugh as he explained the nature of his quirk. He remarked that whoever named it clearly misunderstood its capabilities, suggesting it was more akin to mind control, but he humorously proposed a different name. He encouraged the boy to engage in physical training over the next 2 weeks, not wanting to waste such a valuable quirk. The boy stood stunned as Izuku walked past him, then called out to the rest of the class, inviting them to lunch, some too intimidated to respond. At the beach, 18 individuals gathered: Izuku, Izuru, Yuki, Momo, Kazue, Todoroki, Katsumi, Aijuru, Minoru, Himiko, Mina, Jairu, Tokoyami, Uraraka, Kaminari, Hagakure, Cole, and Dabi. Izuku addressed the group, confirming their purpose for being there was training. The members of Class 1A nodded in agreement, while Dabi, Cole, and Yuki exchanged silent waves. Uraraka inquired about the reason for training at the beach and the identities of the newcomers. Izuku introduced Yuki as his sister and Cole and Dabi as experienced fighters who would assist in their training. He also mentioned Izuru, who held a hero license and would supervise their practice. The students nodded in understanding, and Yuki pointed out that she and Kazue had previously cleaned up the beach, surprising many in the class. Izuku shifted the focus back to training, requesting accurate descriptions of their quirks and their drawbacks. He explained that they would focus on fighting techniques in the first week and quirk application in the second. Mina raised a hand, curious about the reasoning behind the training order. Izuku clarified that string quirks before learning to fight would prevent them from becoming disoriented during critical moments. Momo asked about Izuku's quirk, prompting him to reveal that they would need to figure it out themselves. He mentioned a countdown to the end of the sports festival, at which point he would disclose it. He playfully offered a gift to anyone who could guess correctly before then. Todoroki expressed interest in taking a guess, and Izuku invited him for a walk, asking Izuru and Kazue to document the quirks. Once out of earshot, Izuku asked Todoroki what he thought his quirk was. Todoroki speculated that Izuku could create and delete quirks, explaining his reasoning based on Yuki's quirk and past events. Izuku smiled, acknowledging that Todoroki was partially correct, better than Bakugo's attempt. Curious about Todoroki's views on quirkless individuals, Izuku listened as Todoroki shared his brother's achievements despite being quirkless. Izuku expressed gratitude and revealed that his quirk was called All for All, which allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks. Todoroki cautioned him about revealing this information to his father, fearing it could lead to unwanted arrangements. Izuku shared insights about his father's quirk, explaining that it allowed him to take, keep, and give quirks. Todoroki noted that this could be a reason for the recent villain attacks, which surprised Izuku. He realized he needed to warn his father, suspecting a connection to the creation of a powerful creature known as a Nomu. As they discussed the nature of the Nomu, Izuku explained that it was an abomination with too many quirks, leading to a vegetative state where it could only follow orders. He elaborated on his father's past as a villain before becoming a hero, much to Todoroki's astonishment. Izuku also mentioned his uncle, who had been a vigilante and had returned to train them with a powerful quirk. After sharing this background, Izuku offered Todoroki a gift for guessing his quirk correctly. He presented the option of a new quirk or an edit to his existing one, emphasizing that he would not create an overpowered ability. When Todoroki expressed a longing to remove his fire quirk, Izuku smiled warmly and agreed. He gently placed his hand on Todoroki, deleting the fire quirk and creating a new one, announcing it as Ice Make, an ability that allowed the user to create anything from ice. Drawback: overuse can cause the body to begin to freeze, Izuku explained as the small light grew to a cool, light blue color, offering it to a surprised Shoto. Shoto hesitated, feeling unworthy of such a powerful quirk. Izuku reassured him that he was giving it to him precisely for that reason. Had Shoto simply taken it, Izuku would have altered it to match his regular ice production. He had been open about the quirk because he believed Shoto was a good person. However, he warned that Shoto would still receive a different quirk than his original, and his appearance might change. Izuku had come to realize that he often had specific individuals in mind when creating quirks, basing them on those people, which resulted in the recipient gaining characteristics of the original inspiration. Shoto inquired if that was the case for him. Izuku confirmed that it was based on a character from a pre-quirk anime called Fairy Tail, specifically 𝗓𝗄𝗋. In Gray's case, Ice Make was magic rather than a quirk, but the concept was similar. Shoto accepted the quirk but asked what would happen to him. Izuku speculated that since Shoto's white hair represented his ice quirk, all of his hair might turn white, and his left eye could turn gray, possibly adopting Gray's hairstyle. Shoto nodded and absorbed the quirk, feeling it fill every fiber of his being. He gasped, overwhelmed by the sensation. Izuku explained that the drawback he chose meant that the only way to overcome it would be to undergo the same training as Gray. When Shoto asked what that training entailed, Izuku mentioned that Gray had learned to use his powers while training on an ice mountain in only his boxers. Shoto's eyes widened in disbelief at the thought. Izuku continued, noting that due to frequently stripping down to his boxers, Gray had developed a habit of having his clothes disappear unexpectedly. They shared a laugh, appreciating the moment of camaraderie before walking back to join the others. Upon their return, they found most of the class in a heap, with Yuki standing triumphantly on top. Kazue, Aijuru, Minoru, and Himiko stood to the side, knowing they would face consequences if they tried to join in. Izuku called out to Yuki, asking him to get down. As Shoto and Izuku approached, Mina noticed Shoto's new look and complimented him. Izuru asked how things had gone, and Izuku explained the next steps for Shoto to use his new quirk. He demonstrated by holding his palm open and punching it with his other hand, instructing Shoto to imagine ice gathering in his hand. Shoto followed suit, noticing a small swirl of ice forming. Izuku guided him to say, "Ice make," followed by what he wanted to create, then to throw his hands where he wanted it, emphasizing the importance of picturing it accurately. Shoto focused and declared, "Ice make, glacier," throwing his hands to the ground. A massive glacier appeared, reminiscent of the one from the sports festival, prompting Izuru to whistle in awe. Mina exclaimed that Shoto was too powerful, but Dabi pointed out the frost on Shoto's hands that quickly melted away. Shoto remarked on his reduced resistance to ice, and Izuku suggested that it might be due to his half-hot side. His quirk could have been subconsciously working to regulate his body temperature, allowing for extended use of both ice and fire, but it could still become overloaded until he actively managed it. As the sun began to set, Momo suggested they all head home, and everyone agreed. Shoto pulled Izuku aside, expressing his longing to visit his mother and asking Izuku to accompany him. Izuku smiled and agreed, promising to inform his family before they set out. At the hospital, Izuku and Shoto stood outside the room where Shoto's mother was. Shoto felt frozen in place, and Izuku placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, encouraging him to take his time. Shoto took a deep breath and knocked on the door. A voice from the other side invited them in. They gently pushed the door open to reveal a white room, where a woman with equally white hair sat on the bed, gazing out the window. "Mother," Shoto called out, prompting the woman to turn and look at him. It took her a moment to recognize him, and she gasped softly, covering her mouth with her hand. Slowly, she rose and walked over, tears welling in her eyes. She embraced him tightly, expressing her sorrow. Shoto reassured her, stating it wasn't her fault. She noted how much he had grown and how his hair had changed. Shoto glanced at Izuku, who nodded in encouragement. Izuku introduced himself warmly, explaining that he was a friend of Shoto's. Rei accepted his handshake, her eyes lighting up with joy as she encouraged him to call her Rei. Izuku then began to explain Shoto's new appearance, mentioning his quirk, All for All, which allowed him to create, edit, and delete quirks. Shoto had requested the removal of his fire side, and Rei felt a twinge of sadness, fearing it was her fault. Izuku asked if she was familiar with a fictional character named Gray Fullbuster, and Rei's eyes sparkled with recognition. She enthusiastically shared that he was her favorite character from Fairy Tail, recalling how amusing it was when his clothes would vanish. Shoto and Izuku smiled at her excitement. Izuku continued, explaining that he had not only removed Shoto's fire but had also granted him a quirk that mirrored Gray's ice powers, minus the humorous wardrobe changes. Shoto demonstrated by conjuring a appealing ice necklace, which he gifted to Rei, who happily adorned it. Shoto then turned to Izuku, expressing a longing to share information about the fuel list with Rei, but Izuku suggested they wait. Just then, a nurse knocked and entered, informing them that visiting hours were over. The three stood, and Shoto shared a heartfelt hug with Rei before stepping out of the room. Izuku mentioned that with training, Shoto would eventually unlock the Demon Slayer Ice, which would allow him to create powerful ice constructs, though it would take time. As they made their way through the hospital, Shoto inquired about the Demon Slayer Ice. Izuku explained that it was a magic that enabled its user to create ice that couldn't melt easily. They reached the ground floor, and Shoto decided to approach the reception desk. He asked the receptionist about the possibility of allowing Rei to attend the UA Sports Festival in 2 weeks. She agreed to contact her doctor. Shoto questioned Izuku's motivation for helping. Izuku explained that he wanted Shoto's mother to be part of his life, that Rei deserved to escape her difficult situation, and that it would annoy 𝗕𝗏𝗏. Shoto found himself in agreement with Izuku's reasoning. A doctor approached them, inquiring about their interest in Rei. When informed of their request, he regretfully stated that he couldn't allow her to leave due to her instability. Izuku countered, arguing that positive interactions would be beneficial for her recovery. He pointed out that Rei had suffered from her husband's abuse and needed support from people outside of 𝗕𝗏𝗏's influence. The doctor dismissed Izuku's claims, but Izuku confidently revealed his academic credentials, which startled the doctor. Upon recognizing Izuku's name, the doctor quickly backtracked, apologizing and agreeing to process the application for Rei's release. Afterward, Izuku and Shoto left the hospital, with Shoto expressing gratitude for Izuku's help. At the Midoriya household, Inko called out to her family, and they prepared to leave for UA. Yuki, dressed in a stylish outfit, joined them, and they set off together, meeting up with Himiko and Izuru along the way. At Yuki was filled with excitement as she gazed at the stadium, darting from stall to stall. Izuku announced his intention to prepare for his first song, and his family encouraged him as he ran off to get ready. Inside the stadium, Present Mic welcomed everyone to the UA Sports Festival, announcing that he would be the commentator alongside Eraserhead, who appeared less than enthusiastic about the event. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as the festival was set to begin. Present Mic shouted, and the stadium erupted into cheers as Izuku ran onto the stage, wearing a hoodie and a mask that covered the top half of his face. He announced that he would be starting with "Let the Games Begin." As the bugle sounded, the energy in the air intensified. The crowd was filled with applause and excitement, and Izuku felt a rush of energy as he performed. After finishing, he walked off the stage, and Present Mic asked Aizawa what he thought. Aizawa responded that it was impressive, giving him more energy than his usual coffee, which made Present Mic dramatically gasp in surprise. As Izuku walked through the halls of UA, he was met by most of Class 1A and the other first-year students. One student pointed out how amazing it was to see Winter's Valley in person, and soon Izuku found himself surrounded by curious classmates. He greeted them with a playful British accent, which left the students confused and surprised. Shinso and Jiraiya responded with a reference that further puzzled the crowd, but Izuku's excitement peaked. He was thrilled to find someone who appreciated Star Wars. With a big smile, he asked for their names, learning they were Hitoshi, Shinso, and Kyoka-Jiraiya. He expressed his pleasure in meeting them and the rest of the group, but mentioned he needed to see his family. He assured them he would be around for the day before heading quickly to the 1A changing rooms to change into his sports uniform without anyone noticing. After a few minutes, most of the class arrived, chatting about how cool Winter's Valley was. However, Izuku noticed that Shoto was missing and decided to search for him. He spent about 7 minutes searching until he finally found him, standing with his mother, facing his father. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 growled, questioning why she was there, stating that he had not approved of her presence. Izuku stepped around the corner and confidently declared that he had given the approval. 𝗕𝗏𝗏, taken aback, demanded to know who Izuku was supposed to be. Izuku laughed, his expression shifting to one that made 𝗕𝗏𝗏 flinch and step back. He asserted that he was 𝗕𝗏𝗏's worst nightmare and requested that he leave. 𝗕𝗏𝗏, regaining his composure, challenged Izuku, asking why he should be afraid. Izuku explained that there were many reasons, the most significant being that he was the sole cause of the USJ incident and the son of one for all. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 began to sweat at this revelation but quickly steeled himself, recalling a crucial fact. He pointed out that if Izuku was responsible for the USJ incident, it meant he was quirkless and therefore weak, just like the thugs involved in the attack. Izuku merely laughed at this assumption. He clarified that his goal was to prove that quirkless individuals could be heroes. He possessed a quirk that was hidden from even legal documents. He emphasized that if he could cause the USJ incident without a quirk, then his potential was far greater than 𝗕𝗏𝗏 realized. Izuku wondered what he could do with a quirk like that, and he noticed 𝗕𝗏𝗏's expression shift to one of fear, which embarrassed the hero. As 𝗕𝗏𝗏 walked away, he declared that this wasn't over. Izuku turned to Rei and Shoto, asking if they were all right. Shoto confirmed they were fine, while Rei inquired about the USJ incident. Izuku casually explained that he had incapacitated numerous villains and used one of their quirks against them, prompting Rei to feel uneasy about his nonchalant attitude. Shoto elaborated that 𝗕𝗏𝗏 was upset about his new quirk and the fact that their mother was present, believing that Shoto's quirk should have been a combination rather than solely ice. Rei added that 𝗕𝗏𝗏 was also surprised to see Izuku, which Izuku acknowledged with a hint of sadness before shifting to a more cheerful tone. He offered to introduce them to his family, insisting that it would be nice for Rei to join them. Rei hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but Izuku reassured her that they were all there to support their children, and his little sister would be thrilled to meet someone new who wasn't a threat. Rei expressed her longing to meet Izuku's family, though she couldn't shake her concern for his sister's safety. Meanwhile, Izuku approached his family, introducing Rei to them. Hisashi recognized the Todoroki name and greeted her warmly. Yuki, with her bright smile, introduced herself next, followed by Izuru, who mentioned his connection to Himiko. Inko welcomed Rei and invited her to join them, which prompted laughter from the others due to the playful nature of her comment. Rei took a seat, grateful for their hospitality. Izuku announced that he and Shoto would prepare for the upcoming event, and Hisashi encouraged Izuku to show what someone without a quirk could achieve. Inko and Hisashi both urged him to show no mercy, and Izuku grinned in response. As Class 1A waited in the preparation room, the atmosphere was tense and quiet. To break the silence, Izuku suggested a conversation starter about what quirk they would want if they could change or have any quirk. He pulled out his notebook, prompting curiosity from Momo about his intentions. Izuku explained that he wanted to gather ideas for research. The students began sharing their thoughts, with some expressing satisfaction with their current quirks while others wished for different abilities. The conversation revealed their aspirations and desires, with a mix of humor and seriousness. Suddenly, an announcement came over the intercom, calling Class 1A to the field. As they stepped out, Present Mike enthusiastically introduced them, highlighting their resilience against a villain attack. Izuku felt a mix of pride and anxiety, realizing he was the first-year representative. When he approached the microphone, he took a deep breath and spoke about the importance of hard work and proving that even those without quirks could be heroes. The crowd erupted in excitement, especially those who identified with his journey. Midnight, the first-year judge, made her entrance, and some students expressed concern over her attire. Despite the mixed reactions, she called Izuku to the stage for the students' pledge. As the first event was announced, anticipation filled the air, setting the stage for the challenges ahead. The students were gathered at the stadium, preparing for a race filled with various obstacles. Present Mike explained the rules loudly, asking Aizawa for advice on what to focus on at the start. Aizawa simply pointed out the door as midnight signaled the beginning of the race. As Shoto focused on the task ahead, he quickly summoned his ice powers. He created a smooth path of ice beneath him, allowing him to glide forward effortlessly. With a swift motion, he formed an ice wall and then an ice pillar, launching himself over the barrier. In midair, he activated his grappling technique, swinging down to the ground with a satisfied smile, just as some of his classmates called out to him. Katsumi, using her explosive quirk, propelled herself over the wall, while Momo and others raced behind Shoto. He noted their presence, feeling a mix of determination and competitiveness. As he glanced ahead, he spotted the entrance exam robots, their metallic surfaces glinting in the sunlight. Although he had heard exaggerated tales of their size, he was taken aback by the sight of the towering zero-pointers. With a quick decision, he unleashed a barrage of ice spears, piercing through the robots as he dashed past them, confident they would be fine. Present Mike announced Shoto's impressive performance, noting his new hairstyle and ice quirk. Aizawa explained that Shoto's quirk had undergone a transformation, allowing him to create anything he could imagine from ice. Shoto felt a surge of pride at the recognition, recalling the intense training he had undergone with Izuku and the others. As he approached the next obstacle, a pitfall, he remembered the creative techniques he had seen in a show he watched with his mother. Just then, Katsumi's voice broke through his thoughts, challenging him with her fiery spirit. Shoto maintained his calm demeanor, knowing that provoking her would keep her focused on him rather than her own abilities. As the race continued, Shoto prepared for his next move. He summoned a giant ice ape, feeling exhilarated as it leaped from pillar to pillar. However, he soon realized he had made a mistake by not using both hands to create the creature, leaving it unbalanced. Despite this, he decided to ride it to the end, confident in its performance. Around him, his classmates were navigating the obstacles in their unique ways. Katsumi was blasting her way over the pit, while Minoru bounced from pillar to pillar. Izuku demonstrated incredible balance, running across the beams effortlessly. Shoto felt a twinge of anxiety as they closed in on him, prompting him to urge the ice ape to move faster. Just as they reached the final obstacle, an unexpected explosion rang out, causing him to momentarily lose focus. Panic set in as he wondered what to create next. "Ice make, hang glider," he declared as he safely landed on the ground, only to narrowly evade a pink explosion that erupted nearby. He was about a third of the way through what appeared to be a minefield. Present Mike announced that Shoto Todoroki had been affected by the minefield, and his ape had cleared many mines when it fell, allowing the others to catch up. Shoto thought to himself that it was a clever strategy to enable those at the back to advance. He realized he needed to be cautious from that point on. Creating a path could give others an advantage, especially Izuku and Kazue, who had both endurance and speed. He decided to proceed slowly. His thoughts were interrupted by two loud explosions behind him. Shoto turned to see two mounds of pink from the mines, with streams emerging from each. As the pink faded, he saw metal pieces similar to those used by Izuku and Kazue. "Ice make, path," he shouted, sprinting across it to overtake them. As he reached their position, they were almost landing. He felt a moment of safety until they both spun in the air, flipping their metal pieces to hit the ground, propelling themselves forward. Shoto continued to sprint, hoping to catch up. "Ice make, cheetah," he exclaimed as he leaped slightly into the air, landing on an ice cheetah. He watched as Izuku and Kazue rolled to soften their landing and then ran ahead. Riding the cheetah, Shoto quickly closed the distance as they entered the hall, the finish line drawing near. Present Mike announced that Shoto Todoroki was in first place, with Izuku Midoriya and Kazue Mineta tied for second. Shoto felt a rush of accomplishment as he rode the ice cheetah before dismounting. He turned to see Izuku and Kazue approaching him with broad smiles. Kazue complimented Shoto on his performance, while Izuku acknowledged his improvement with his quirk, deciding not to mention the need to use both hands, as the fall had served as a reminder. Shoto expressed his gratitude for their training, bowing slightly, emphasizing that he couldn't have done it without their support. Izuku insisted that Shoto's hard work was the key to his success. Present Mike then announced a break for everyone to grab lunch and enjoy a song from Winter's Valley. Izuku felt his phone buzz in his pocket and read a message from a friend. Crispy informed Izuku that he was at the festival and wanted to meet Shoto at the front gate. Izuku bluntly relayed the message to Shoto, who was taken aback. He quickly processed the description of the person and realized it matched 𝗵𝗲, the individual from the USJ incident. Without hesitation, Shoto dashed toward the entrance. At the front gate, Shoto spotted 𝗵𝗲 with coal and rushed over, tackling him to the ground. Tears streamed down his face as he exclaimed his disbelief at 𝗵𝗲's survival. He had imagined what his brother would look like without scars, and the resemblance was undeniable. After releasing 𝗵𝗲, Shoto questioned why he hadn't reached out to let them know he was alive, recalling how their mother had been devastated by the news of his supposed death. 𝗵𝗲 expressed regret, explaining that he had distanced himself to escape a painful situation. The two brothers stood in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of their reunion. Cole, who had been forgotten in the moment, suggested they head inside to enjoy Winter's Valley's performance. 𝗵𝗲 agreed, but Shoto insisted they see their mother first, surprising 𝗵𝗲 with the news that she was indeed present, thanks to Izuku's efforts to secure her a day out from the hospital. Shoto explained that it was more like 𝗵𝗲 had demanded it, and they couldn't argue with him. When asked why, he revealed that 𝗵𝗲 had a MSDrs in psychology and held significant influence over other psychologists, which impressed 𝗵𝗲. Shoto suggested they go see their mother, who was sitting with the myheroacademia. As they approached, 𝗵𝗲 followed behind, looking a bit weak. The 5 people at the table looked up at them. Rei greeted them cheerfully, expressing how proud she was of Shoto's performance in the race. Shoto and 𝗵𝗲 were surprised by her transformation after just a brief interaction with the myheroacademia. Yuki ran up and hugged 𝗵𝗲, who accepted the gesture warmly. She then asked if Cole was around. 𝗵𝗲 informed her that he was looking for a place to sit to enjoy Winter's Valley's performance. Shoto cleared his throat to get 𝗵𝗲's attention and gestured toward Rei, prompting 𝗵𝗲 to take a deep breath. He greeted Rei, trying to keep his tone gentle. To their surprise, Rei began to cry, but then she hugged 𝗵𝗲 tightly, expressing her happiness that he was alive. 𝗵𝗲 was taken aback and asked how she knew it was him. Rei giggled and explained that as his mother, it was easy for her to recognize him. She then asked Shoto to summon his siblings. Shoto agreed and pulled out his phone to text them. Inko, the Midoriya matriarch, inquired about 𝗵𝗲's preferred name. He replied that he preferred 𝗵𝗲, likening it to a surname. Inko then offered them a place to sit, noting that they had plenty of room. 𝗵𝗲 hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but Hisashi and Izuru reassured him that it was fine. They had enough space, and Inko had extended the invitation. Yuki added that their mother was quite stubborn, just like Izuru, which made 𝗵𝗲 nod awkwardly as he texted Cole. As Cole arrived, Present Mike announced the start of Winter's Valley's performance. Shoto, 𝗵𝗲, and Cole took their seats to watch as the band walked onto the stage. The lead singer addressed the crowd, sharing that he had been inspired by the students' pledge and would perform a new song titled Weak. The crowd erupted in applause, moved by the song's powerful message, which resonated with those who felt vulnerable or had weak quirks. The singer reminded everyone that there is nothing wrong with being weak, emphasizing that even heroes can experience hardships, but what truly matters is the strength to rise again. Winter's Valley left the stage, leaving a lasting impression on the audience. Present Mike shouted, asking Shota about his well-being. Aizawa responded, acknowledging that everyone can break down, both physically and mentally. Present Mike jokingly questioned if Aizawa was truly the real Eraserhead, to which Aizawa simply told him to be quiet. Izuku smiled at the hero's banter as he turned a corner, only to come face to face with the number 2 hero, Endeavor. He felt a wave of disdain wash over him. Endeavor warned Izuku to watch his mouth, but Izuku countered with a threat, reminding him that there was ample evidence against him held by the Midoriya family and others. Endeavor's anger grew as he questioned Izuku's words. Izuku pointed out Endeavor's abusive behavior towards his family and how it had led to tragic consequences. He emphasized that Endeavor could have surpassed All Might if he had cared about others instead of his own reputation. With that, Izuku walked past him, leaving Endeavor stunned. Izuku explained that All Might focused on helping civilians and preventing tragedies, unlike Endeavor, who was consumed by his own ego. After making his point, Izuku got dressed and returned to greet his family. Upon arriving, Izuku found the Todoroki family catching up with Dabi and Rei. He greeted them warmly, and Yuki excitedly praised him for his performance. Izuru complimented him for not using his quirk, while Inko noted the close competition with Kazuya. Hisashi teased Izuku about his relationship with a girl, causing him to blush and deny it, though his family playfully insisted otherwise. Present Mike interrupted, announcing that the break was over and calling for the students to gather for the next event, the cavalry battle. Midnight explained the rules, detailing how teams would compete for headbands with points based on their positions, with the first-place team earning a staggering 1 million points. Shoto felt the intensity of the other students' gazes, realizing he would be the target due to his high score. As panic set in, Momo approached Shoto, expressing her longing to join his team. She reassured him of her trust in his abilities and their training together. Grateful, Shoto accepted her offer. Just then, a girl with pink dreadlocks boldly asked to join their team, introducing herself as 𝗵𝗃, a genius inventor. She excitedly explained that her inventions would help them win. Curious about her creations, Shoto inquired about their power source. Mei explained they ran on electricity, and Shoto decided to recruit Kaminari to their team. With their team assembled, Shoto laid out a strategy, assigning roles and emphasizing teamwork. He instructed Yaoyorozu to be the rider while he and the others would support her, using their quirks to protect the team and keep an eye on their competition. Shoto recognized the main threats they would face, including Izuku and his friends, who were known for their strong quirks and strategic thinking. Izuku was considered the biggest threat. Although he hadn't used his quirk, he had still managed to defeat the villains at the USJ. With MSDR's degree in Quirkology, if he assembled the right team, he could unleash significant chaos. Shoto finished explaining this to his friends, Kaminari and Momo, who both nodded in agreement. Curious, Mei asked who Izuku was. Momo described him as the guy with the green undercut, Izuku Midoriya, who had come in second and made the student pledge. Mei then referred to him as Muscles, causing Shoto, Kaminari, and Momo to sweat drop at the nickname. Shoto continued to clarify, saying that Bakugo was the angry blonde, Minoru was the boy with purple ball on his head, Kazuya had long purple hair, and Kirishima was the boy with red hair who resembled a Pokemon character. Mei summarized their discussion, confirming that they needed to be cautious of Pomeranian, Purple Ball, Metapod, Muscles, and Purple Girl. Present Mick's voice boomed, announcing that time was up and instructing everyone to report their teams to midnight. In Izuku's perspective, he realized he had only 5 minutes to find a team. He decided not to join Shoto, as it would be too obvious. Instead, he aimed to team up with individuals outside of Class 1A or those he didn't know well. Spotting Shinso, who had purple hair, Izuku approached him with a proposal to team up, surprising Shinso, who hadn't expected Izuku to remember him. Izuku explained that Shinso had trained his body over the past 2 weeks, making him a valuable asset. He noted that Shinso's quirk required a response, allowing him to control opponents long enough for them to secure headbands. Izuku believed they could handle Bakugo easily and had a strategy in mind for other threats. Shinso was taken aback by Izuku's understanding of his quirk requirements, which Izuku clarified by recalling a previous encounter where Shinso had threatened them. He had waited to respond, wary of Shinso's potential strength. As they brainstormed potential teammates, Izuku listed several candidates, weighing their strengths and weaknesses. He concluded that Kendo, Kodai, and Shiozaki would be ideal additions to their team. With a plan in place, they quickly located the 3 girls, who agreed to join after hearing the strategy, thus completing their team. When Present Mike announced that time was up, Izuku, Kendo, Shiozaki, Shinso, and Kodai approached midnight to present their team, which was accepted without issue. Izuku noticed Shoto's team, which included Momo, Kaminari, and a girl from the support course with pink dreadlocks, and realized they were using Kaminari to power their inventions. He also observed Katsumi's team, consisting of herself, Aijuru, and Mina, as well as a team with Kazuya, Minoru, Himiko, and Tokoyami. Izuku paid close attention to these teams, particularly Minoma's, knowing he would likely provoke Katsumi, which could work to their advantage. Present Mike began announcing the teams in order of points, and as he called out the names, the students prepared for the competition. Izuku's team sprang into action as soon as the signal was given. Shinso taunted opposing teams, and when they reacted, he took control of them, allowing Shiozaki to swiftly collect their headbands. Meanwhile, Shoto was creating ice creatures to fend off other teams, successfully gathering a few headbands. Kendo enlarged her hands to smash the ice wolves, collecting the shards and passing them to Kodai, who used her quirk to enhance them. When Izuku received the first shard, he launched it at incredible speeds, causing significant disruption. Katsumi, however, faced challenges of her own. Monoma had stolen her headband by copying her quirk and retaliating with an explosion, which only fueled her anger. Fortunately, Monoma was unaware of erasure WHP, so he couldn't copy that ability. Katsumi focused her attention on Monoma, determined to reclaim her headband. Meanwhile, Kazue's team posed a threat to Shoto's group, with Minoru throwing his projectiles and Himiko using some of his BLD to create distractions. Kazue had copied Shoto's quirk, sending ice wolves to counter his efforts, while Tokoyami and Dark Shadow protected their team from other competitors. Izuku's team was getting very close to Shoto's when he made a bold suggestion. He expressed his intention to jump, surprising his teammates. He asked Kendo to launch him and Shiozaki to catch him if he got close to the ground. Kendo questioned his sanity, but Izuku clarified that they needed to trap the opposing team. He outlined a plan that involved being launched into the air, using ice shards from Kodai, and having Shiozaki catch him if necessary. He also instructed Shinso to taunt Team Mineta, knowing they had strong feelings against quirk discrimination. Despite the risks, the team executed the plan flawlessly. Kodai provided ice fragments, and Izuku jumped onto Kendo's enlarged hand before being launched high into the air. He released the ice shards, which Kodai enlarged at the last moment, creating a ring of ice around Team Yaoyorozu. Shinso quickly began taunting Kazue's team, who reacted with anger, allowing him to gain control over them. Kazue then used Shoto's quirk to cover the ice barrier with a layer of ice. As the countdown began, Shiozaki started digging into the ground, sending her vines toward the opposing team while Shinso continued his taunts. Once the ice covered the barrier, her vines emerged from the ground, and while the other team was distracted, she managed to grab a band from around Momo's neck before pulling it back through the hole she had created. She then sent more vines to retrieve Izuku, successfully dragging him back to their team just as an announcement echoed through the arena. Present Mike declared that time was up, and Shinso released his control over Team Mineta. Team Yaoyorozu was freed from their ice trap, only to discover that one of their headbands was missing. They paled when they realized which one it was. Present Mike announced that Team Midoriya had secured first place, followed by Team Mineta in second, Team Yaoyorozu in third, and Team Bakugo in fourth, all advancing to the final round. He also mentioned that there would be a performance from Winter's Valley, followed by minigames for those who didn't make it to the final round. Izuku approached the stage in his disguise, holding an acoustic guitar. He announced his performance of Meant to Live and began to play. The crowd was energized by the song, which was expected given the quality of the performances. After his performance, Present Mike announced the upcoming minigames for those who didn't advance. Izuku returned to his family, where Hisashi greeted him as he sat down with the group. Shoto and Himiko joined them shortly after. A girl with white hair and red streaks, who introduced herself as Fuyumi, complimented Izuku on his teamwork during the cavalry battle. She expressed admiration for how well he worked with his teammates. Izuku explained that he had only spoken to Kendo due to their roles as class presidents and had not trained with the others. The Todoroki siblings were surprised by this revelation. Natsuo, another member of the Todoroki family, noted how smoothly Izuku had worked with his team, suggesting that it seemed like they had trained together extensively. Izuku shared that he was a quirk enthusiast, maintaining notebooks on various quirks and their users. He aspired to be a quirkless hero, believing it was essential to understand quirks and their weaknesses. Natsuo expressed gratitude for Izuku's ambitions, sharing his own struggles with being quirkless and how Izuku's determination inspired him. Izuku recognized Natsuo from Shoto's descriptions and introduced himself. Fuyumi shook Izuku's hand and expressed curiosity about his quirk status. Izuku explained that, legally, he was considered quirkless, but he did possess a quirk in a different sense. Fuyumi was intrigued and pressed for clarification. Natsuo inquired about Izuku's intentions. Izuku explained that he wanted to demonstrate that even those without quirks could become heroes, emphasizing that he couldn't make that point if he revealed his quirk now. Natsuo pressed further, questioning why Izuku felt the need to prove this in the first place and why he would conceal his quirk from the government. Izuku asked what the most powerful quirk one could imagine might be. Natsuo responded, suggesting the ability to create, edit, and delete quirks or the power to take, hold, and give quirks. He noted that if someone possessed such a quirk, it would be understandable for them to keep it a secret, given how people might react. Hisashi and Izuku chuckled at this, prompting Natsuo to question what was so amusing. Izuku and Hisashi revealed that their quirks aligned with Natsuo's description. Izuku could create, edit, and delete quirks, while Hisashi had the ability to take, hold, and give them. Natsuo's eyes widened in surprise as he processed this information. He then inquired if Izuku's quirk was registered, to which Hisashi explained that heroism was not recognized as a profession when he was born. Dabi, Fuyumi, Natsuo, and Cole were taken aback by this revelation. Rei asked if Hisashi was literally referring to being an old man, and Inko confirmed it. Rei burst into laughter, startling the Todoroki siblings, who had never seen her react this way. Inko joined in, recalling how her mother had never allowed her to date Hisashi without knowing he was older than her grandparents. Shoto leaned toward Izuku, noting how much Rei had changed in just a few hours around his parents. Izuku admitted that he had anticipated a significant change but was still surprised by the extent of it. Dabi expressed a longing for Rei to remain this way all the time. Izuku shared his plan to transfer her case to himself, confident that the positive effects would be undeniable. Fuyumi questioned whether he could do that while still in high school, to which Izuku explained that he held degrees in various subjects, including a MSDRs in quirkology and psychology. The Todoroki siblings and Cole were astonished by this revelation. Izuru chimed in, reminding everyone that Izuku had created quirkology, which had become a crucial subject in their world over the past 3 years. Natsuo was amazed, noting that all medical professionals and educators were now required to study it. Izuku chuckled, acknowledging the rapid growth of the field. Dabi remarked on the significant impact quirkology had on society, still processing that Izuku was its creator. Izuku credited Uncle Izuru for the recognition, leaving the group in stunned silence. After a brief pause, Izuku decided to grab something to eat and headed toward the cafeteria. On his way, he encountered Kazue and Katsumi, who approached him with a serious demeanor. They expressed a longing to explain Katsumi's past behavior toward him. Katsumi admitted that her bullying stemmed from fear that Izuku would pursue a quirkless hero path and potentially face danger. She felt reassured when he mentioned wanting to be an underground hero like Eraserhead, but her fear led her to challenge him instead. Izuku understood and acknowledged that it had gotten to her head. Katsumi reflected on her actions, expressing regret for forgetting her initial motivations. She apologized sincerely, and Izuku responded warmly, assuring her that he forgave her. The way he said her name made Katsumi feel a deeper connection, but she hesitated to share more and decided to leave. Kazue then took a deep breath, preparing to speak, but was interrupted by a flurry of colorful figures rushing in. They all shouted in unison, causing a chaotic scene. Kazue, feeling frustrated, recalled the barrier quirk Hisashi had used during a previous encounter. She summoned a matching barrier around herself and Izuku, pushing the others away. Izuku, confused, asked what was happening. Kazue revealed that he was her first friend since she had been diagnosed as quirkless and that he had trained her to fight. She expressed how important he was to her and asked if he would be her boyfriend. Expecting rejection, she was startled when Izuku fainted, collapsing to the ground. Kazue lowered the barrier, and the other girls rushed to check on him. Just then, Yuki appeared, calling out for Izuku. Upon seeing him unconscious, she quickly activated her quirks to reach him. Kazue explained what had happened, and Yuki squealed in excitement, declaring that something significant was unfolding. Izuku stirred awake, confused, and mentioned having the strangest dream about Kazue confessing to him, only to notice everyone staring at him in anticipation. It wasn't a dream, was it? Izuku pondered, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over him as the girls nodded in response. Kazue was feeling a bit down when Izuku addressed her. He expressed his longing to be her boyfriend, prompting Yuki to squeal with excitement while the other girls who had tried to stop Kazue walked away. Yuki exclaimed joyfully that she was getting a big sister, which made both Izuku and Kazue blush deeply. Proudly, she declared she would call Kazue Kazun from now on. Eager to share the news, Yuki grabbed their hands and led them back to the Midoriya, Todoroki, and Cole households. Upon arriving, Yuki burst into the room, dragging Kazue and Izuku behind her. She shouted for her parents, Inko and Hisashi, to listen. With a proud smile, she announced that Izuku and Kazue were together now, completely ignoring the blush on their faces. The Midoriya family, along with Shoto, Dabi, and Cole, grinned at the news. Izuru remarked that it was about time, while Inko and Hisashi welcomed Kazue to the family. Shoto teased that it took them long enough, and Himiko laughed, suggesting she thought they would wait until their third year to share the news. As she texted Minoru about the development, Izuku and Kazue exchanged mischievous glances and encouraged Himiko to confess her feelings to him. Izuru added a playful warning about threatening Minoru, causing Himiko to blush even more. The group shared a laugh before settling down to watch the mini-games, with Minoru joining them shortly after, sitting next to Himiko with a shy expression. They enjoyed the games for another 30 minutes. As the games concluded, Present Mike announced the start of the one-on-one battles. He explained that the students from the top 4 teams in the cavalry battle would compete in a tournament-style format, with their matches displayed on the screen. The first match was set to be Izuku Midoriya versus Itsuka Kendo, and Present Mike called for the fighters to make their way to the prep room. Izuku stood up, and Kazue followed him, wishing him good luck. She kissed him on the cheek, causing both of them to turn bright red. Grateful, Izuku headed to his prep room while Kazue, Minoru, and Himiko made their way to the seating area for Class 1A. After a brief wait, Present Mike shouted to see if everyone was ready. He introduced Itsuka Kendo as the handy fighting ginger, while Kendo rolled her eyes at the description. He then introduced Izuku as the one who had caused a significant incident without using a quirk, which made him sweat nervously. Midnight asked if both fighters were ready, and they nodded in agreement. With a shout, she signaled for the match to begin. Izuku sprang into action, sprinting toward Kendo as she enlarged her hands to swing at him. He skillfully dodged her first attack by sliding underneath it and then performed a handspring off her second swing. In midair, he brought his right leg down onto her shoulder, knocking her to the ground. Quickly, he landed above her, grabbing her arm and pulling it back. Realizing the predicament, Kendo surrendered, and Midnight declared Izuku the winner, visibly shaken by how swiftly he had won. The crowd, while slightly disappointed by the quick outcome, had mixed reactions. Some voiced their disbelief, claiming a quirkless individual couldn't defeat someone with a quirk. Izuku approached Midnight and asked if he could use the microphone. She nodded and handed it to him. Addressing the crowd, he firmly stated that those who believed he had cheated were mistaken. He reminded them of the pre-quirk era, where humans accomplished incredible feats without quirks. He encouraged them to look up records of strength and competitions showcasing the abilities of quirkless individuals. He explained that quirks were merely physical abilities that could be manipulated by others and that many modern weapons could harm those with quirks. His words silenced the dissenters, leaving them to reconsider their assumptions. He then walked off after returning the microphone to Midnight. In the 1A seating area, Kaminari remarked that it was impressive as Izuku entered, and many agreed with him. Izuku thanked them before sitting down next to Kazue, who leaned against him. Present Mike announced the competitors, stating that on the left was Eraserhead's hypnotizing clone, Hitoshi Shinso, and on the right was the quiet girl who could make her weapons triple in size, Yui Kodai. Mina asked Izuku who he thought would win since he was on a team with Kodai and Shinso. Izuku replied that it depended on who was stronger. Tsu inquired about the reasoning behind his answer. Izuku explained that Shinsu's quirk required a response, and since Kodai was quiet and needed objects to enlarge, it was unlikely she would respond to him. Therefore, it would come down to their fighting abilities. Kazue pointed out that unless Shinso took control over 𝗵𝗲 or Midnight, it wasn't illegal, only unethical if the judges were bribed beforehand. However, based on her interactions with him, she doubted he would consider that. Izuku agreed, and the class felt a bit uneasy about how much thought they had put into the possibilities in such a short time as they watched the match. He noted that Shinso seemed to have practiced his fighting skills over the past 2 weeks, and the class turned back to see Kodai on the ground, tapping out in an armbar. Midnight announced that Hitoshi Shinso was the winner, and it had been a relatively even fight. Momo stated she would head off to prepare, and Tokoyami nodded and followed her. Mina asked who they thought would win the next match, and Izuku and Kazue answered in unison that it would be Tokoyami, leaving no room for argument. Shoto expressed suspicion at their certainty. Izuku explained that Momo wasn't trained in long-distance fighting styles, while Dark Shadow specialized in it. Kazue added that Dark Shadow would rush her, forcing Momo to create a shield and gradually push her back. Izuku concluded that eventually, Momo would be out of bounds. 𝐎𝐩𝐿 commented on how strange it was that they continued off each other so smoothly. Kazue explained that they had worked on their analysis together for 10 months leading up to the UA entrance exam, which helped them get used to each other's thought processes. Ojiro remarked on how he thought they had only trained together for a month or 2. Minoru clarified that they met during the sludge villain incident and began training the very next day. Jiraiya asked if they had been at that attack, and Kaminari mentioned there was a video of their fight, noting how well they worked together. Himiko expressed interest in seeing it, and Mina was surprised she hadn't seen it, considering she was related to Izuku. Himiko clarified that they weren't related by BLD. Izuku's family had helped her escape from her BRH family. 𝐎𝐻𝐿 pointed out that they shared the same last name, to which Himiko explained that she changed it when her father adopted her. Ida then asked about her original family name and what her family did, causing Izuku, Kazue, Minoru, Ijuru, and Himiko to flinch. Himiko hesitated before revealing her BRH name, which was Himiko Toga. Minoru placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, offering her a warm smile, which she returned before looking at Izuku and nodding. The class turned their attention back to him as he explained that she had been neglected and abused because of her quirk. Sato questioned why there was an issue, as her quirk allowed her to transform into other people. Himiko began to explain that the problem was the requirement for her transformation. She needed to drink the BLD of the person she wanted to become, which caused gasps from those who were unaware. Mina asked if Himiko was one of the people Midori's sister had helped, causing the group that already knew to flinch. Himiko answered dejectedly, confirming it. Shoji began to speak, but Mina excitedly finished for him, expressing that it was cool and highlighting that Himiko was living proof that villains could become heroes. Most of the class realized she was right, and Mina then inquired about the others, leaving Izuku silent. Present Mike announced the competitors, introducing 𝗵𝗲 Tokoyami on the left, who was friends with his shadow, and Momo Yaoyorozu on the right, referred to as the human Minecraft inventory. Izuku felt grateful for the announcement and urged the class to focus on the fight between Yaoyorozu and Tokoyami. They all shifted their attention, witnessing Izuku and Kazue's predictions unfold precisely. Kazue suggested that Katsumi and Ijuru should head to their waiting room, and they both nodded in agreement. Shortly after, Midnight declared Tokoyami the winner. Mina proposed making bets while Izuku and Kazue explained their predictions. Izuku noted that the match was balanced, indicating it could go either way, surprising the class. Momo, who had just returned with Tokoyami, asked if that was true. Kazue explained that if Katsumi could maintain her composure, she could easily win with her erasure WHP. However, if Ijuru managed to make her lose control, she would be limited to her explosions. He could use 14% of his stockpiling quirk, or 16% if he utilized hardening simultaneously, giving him a fair amount of speed and strength. Kazue continued, mentioning that Katsumi also had her explosions, was skilled in air maneuvering, and had excellent battle instincts. Izuku added that Ijuru had been training hard over the past 2 weeks, which might have improved his instincts. He noted that Ijuru's hardening couldn't last forever, allowing Katsumi to force him to maintain it until he could no longer hold on, giving her the opportunity to blast him out. Kezue concluded that if Ijuru could mstr the technique for sending blasts of air, which was possible above 15%, he could use that to try to push Katsumi out. However, in that scenario, she would likely use her explosions to return to the ring. Himiko summarized that there were too many possibilities to determine a clear winner. Izuku and Kezue agreed, and Minoru commented that they seemed like a couple, causing them both to blush. Present Mike then announced the competitors again, introducing Katsumi Bakugo as the explosive Pomeranian who could also erase quirks, and Ijuru Kirishima as the red metapod who could also use superpower. To be continued.